It's time for the two of us to finally face off. Me, the powerless but brilliant billionaire, against you, the righteous, all-American super strong dude who dresses in blue and red. This conflict is gonna be so unique.
Excuse me?
Huh? Who said that?
Me, Iron Man, sort of facing off with Captain America here. Whole Civil War thing we got going, if you don't mind.
I mind! The Batman minds.
Yeah, it's just, we're two iconic heroes in our universe, and our differing ideologies have finally brought us to blows in an incredibly dramatic fashion, so...
Excuse me? That's our thing? We're Batman v Superman?
You mean versus?
No, I mean V, as in I'm V-ing him. You know, because it's the dawn of justice.
I am from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls. Prepare for Prattle.
Choose a side in the Clone Wars. Welcome to Prattle World. I am your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan, and in this podcast, I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. And welcome to Clone Wars, where two similar pieces of media clash to be crowned champion. Two go in, and only one comes out. And we are here again, and this titanic clash of ideologies has been building for some time. It's been in the planning for forever. And we have been waiting to the perfect moment to do this. It's Mother's Day. It's 6 years since one of these films came out, to the day where I actually saw one of these films. And we are here with the Podfather. That is the father of Nerdify. It is Dan Keatis.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me back on Prattle World. Although, to give you a peek behind the curtain, we are in fact recording in my home. So if you hear my dog start shouting, it's just because he wants attention. I've taken him out for a wee, so hopefully he will disrupt the show as little as possible. But I'll try not to do a Kevin Smith style. Shaggy, we're talking about Batman.
Well, this is where we did Nerdify. This is the home of Nerdify.
It is, yeah. So it's weird how things come full circle, because I've lived in two other flats like prior to moving back into this one. It's weird, the cyclicality of it all. So for new listeners, Nerdify is a podcast that we used to do between, I think, the years 2015 and 2017.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And we did discuss one of the films we're going to discuss today, but in comparison, something quite different. But I'll let you do the explanation before I fill in with the trivia.
Oh, don't worry. You've got a lot to say. I know you've been wanting to say a lot. I haven't said what exactly we are doing, but most people probably know already. We are going to compare two very similar films. Batman versus Superman. Not versus, actually, it's V. The Superman, Dawn of Justice, and Captain America's Civil War. So, Dan, I know you've got a lot to say about this, and I don't want to say I've been putting this off, but I have a little bit. Because I think I wanted a bit of time away from the release the Snyder Cut, restore the Snyderverse-ness of it all.
I think that's been a really good idea, because I mean the 6 years from the opening weekend I think is great. Mother's Day is a happy coincidence, because obviously mothers feature quite heavily in both films.
Absolutely.
And also I think in the context of the Snyder Cut being released, I think BVS has had a little bit of a
reappraisal?
A reappraisal, that's exactly the word I was looking for. Yeah, a reappraisal in the eyes of some people. Now, if you're listening to this, you likely have opinions about one or both of these films, and it's more than likely you have a favourite. And if you have a favourite, then one more white guy on a podcast is not going to change your mind. And nor do I really want to. But the reason I wanted to sort of hijack this podcast, and I appreciate that, because I know that the modus operandi of this is to sort of shine a spotlight on misunderstood or sort of pop culture offerings that sometimes get missed. whereas this is kind of as mainstream as you can get. But I like to think that I bring a perspective that is perhaps atypical.
It's probably almost a little bit of a Secret Defenders, if I'm going to use a different one of my formats, but kind of within.
Yeah, because we did go back and forth on that as well. But I think the reason I wanted to do a Clone Wars is because but these films have been discussed in relation to one another quite a lot. And what's always raised my hackles is this notion of, because they both do this very similar things, and I know you're going to get on that in a second, but the notion of this one does it right and the other does it wrong. And invariably, it seems that when these films are discussed in relation to one another, it's pulling one down to bring the other up. And I wanted to... I know the format means that we have to pick a winner.
Sure.
However, I want to take this opportunity to celebrate both because these films both mean a lot to me.
There we go. Very good. Well, before we get started, because I know, like you said, I think you've told me you've rehearsed all the things you want to say about these two films. Well, the first one in particular. But before we get onto that, just to clarify, we are doing the Snyder cut of BVS.
Yes, the Ultimate Edition.
Ultimate Edition, as it's otherwise known. But before we begin, as always, we do the reasons for comparison. So, first off, both films were released in the same year.
Well, yeah.
2 months apart. Both feature characters created by rival comic book companies. Both feature two iconic superheroes coming to blows over dueling ideologies, which is instigated by a mad genius who wants to rid the world of superpowered beings.
Yeah.
Both introduce new characters into their respective universes that arguably steal the show.
Yep.
Both loosely adapt classic comic book storylines.
Okay, yeah.
Both films address the fallout from collateral damage from previous installments and debate the politics of superheroics on the world stage.
Yep.
Both were designed to create more spin-off movies within their respective universes. Both feature flashbacks of dead parents which feed into the Iron Man Batman character arcs, both specifically making reference to their mothers during their climactic battles. And after the opening flashbacks that both have, both begin the main plot in Africa. And last two, both Lex and Zemo bring back a villain from a previous installment, Winter Soldier, Zod/Doomsday, to be a current threat. And both Lex and Zemo share the same fate, teasing that the worst is yet to come.
Excellent. Yeah, I'd throw some more in there. I'd also throw in that they're both... they both have the trappings of political thrillers, and I would also argue that they both had far-reaching sort of consequences for their respective universes, even though sort of on the Marvel side of things it was narrative consequences, but with the DC side of things it was behind-the-scenes consequences, because, I mean, no one will defend this film more vociferously than me, but we can't... and that's something that people are talking about a lot, actually, is whether BVS was a box office disappointment, because some people are saying, well, a film with the first film to have Batman and Superman should have cracked $1 billion, and some people are saying, well, that's an arbitrary target, and it made 160 million profit, and that's a lot of anyone's money.
Yep.
However, we can debate the tits off that all day long, but the fact is, what matters is clearly Warner Brothers didn't consider it a success, because we know they shat the bed spectacularly on that vision that Snyder had, which is so unfair to give the guy the keys to the kingdom and then say, we'd like our keys back now, Mr. Snyder, sir.
Well, I think this is a great opportunity for you. Again, you've had this rehearsed, you've had this in your mind as something you wanted to say for a long time about Batman v Superman: The Dawn of Justice. So I'm just going to give you the floor.
This is about BVS in relation to Civil War and that sort of era of DCEU films in relation to the MCU. But my thesis is as follows. A lot of people call the MCU McDonald's. They make that comparison. You know, it's cheap, disposable fast food for pop culture. And I would argue that that's unfair. Do you know what the MCU is? It's Starbucks. And that's not, and that sounds like I'm throwing shade at the MCU. I'm not at all. Like, Starbucks is incredibly well branded. It offers good quality, and above all, it's consistent. You can go into, as with McDonald's, really, you can go into any Starbucks anywhere in the world, and if you order a caramel latte, it's going to taste roughly the same. So I want you to keep that image in your head: caramel latte.
Okay, got it. Caramel latte.
So you've got, like, imagine that Civil War or any sort of MCU film really is a caramel latte, right? Mm-hmm. So when you sip a caramel latte, you're going to get the sweetness. That's going to be the first thing you get. So you're going to get that sort of sugar rush. Mm-hmm. And that's not the only thing you get. You get, like, the creaminess and the richness of the milk foam. You're going to get the richness and earthiness of the espresso. So there is substance underneath that sweetness.
Okay.
So with something like Civil War, the sweetness is the quips, the bombastic action sequences, the sense of familiarity, the sense of, like, losing yourself in a familiar universe, the familiar characters. But underneath that, there is substance. There is, there's a lot of fantastic character work going on. There's great performances. There's more nuance than you'd expect when you look at a caramel latte. Now, imagine you've got your caramel latte over here, and on the other side, you've got a glass of red wine. So, like, I don't know, a Cabernet Sauvignon or Montepulciano, whatever your favorite. And I'm not being one of those, I'm not being one of those Snyder fans who's like, oh, DCEU films are like fine wine and, MCU's Coca-Cola. I'm not being that guy. This is just an analogy.
Sure.
So when you sip a glass of red wine, depending on the state of your palate, you'll taste different things. You'll get different things out of that subjective experience. So you might get a little bit of cherry, for example, or dark chocolate, or you might get sort of like bitters, you might get tannins. Now, if you have been sipping your caramel latte for half an hour, and then you taste your red wine, it's going to taste like battery acid, isn't it? Because your palate has been primed for the sweetness. Mm-hmm. And like that's what you're gonna expect. And I think, arguably, the sort of Marvel films that came out before this, we had Age of Ultron and Ant-Man, which are pretty good examples of the Marvel MO. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So compare that with, I think, audience expectations at the time of what a film featuring Batman and Superman should be. And it's fair to say that what we got would be jarring to their palate for a lot of people. Sure. And including me, like, I hasten to add, because the first time I saw BVS, I did not know what to make of it. Because it's, and I don't think it helped, weirdly, that I saw it in IMAX, because viscerally that film's a lot. like that, even that Batman theme is dun 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 dun. It's like, whoa, fuck. And the fact that we go from the Death of the Waynes straight into the retelling of the Battle of Metropolis with Man of Steel from Bruce's perspective, it's wow, a lot. And even, like, you were there when my partner, she described it as a headache of a film, and I saw it with her and with my best friend Tom, and they both hated it. And when they said, "Oh, so what did I think of it?" I was like, "I'm really not sure." And I've gone back to it time and time and time again, that both the theatrical version and then when it was released, the Ultimate Edition. And every time I've seen it, I've come away with something new and something more to appreciate. I started enjoying the film exponentially more when I started appreciating the film on its own merit, because what I'd done, which I think is something that we can as fans, and I've talked about this quite a bit actually on Nerdify, we can get in our own way quite a lot. Having seen and loved Man of Steel, I had already sort of written, shot and directed in my head what that encounter should look like. I was going into the film with a sort of a list of bullet points that needed to be ticked off, a list of things I needed to see. So when I didn't get that, I wasn't quite sure what to make of the film. But I think time has vindicated it, and I think it has rewarded rewatches for me personally. And I think, but at the same time, if you're someone who didn't enjoy that film and who has a really sort of vehement opposition to the way the characters were treated, then you're probably not going to feel all that inclined to give it another shot. And I totally appreciate that. However, what I will argue against is this notion of, well, Zack Snyder hates Superman, or Zack Snyder doesn't understand the characters. And, like, if you're old like me, you were there when people said the exact same thing about Tim Burton, you know?
Yeah.
And this idea of authorship, I think, is something that specifically Batman and Superman have a bit of a problem with, especially Superman, because if you grew up with the Christopher Reeve films and not necessarily the comics or the animated series, then you're going to have a very specific idea of what Superman is and should be. And if you see something that is in opposition to that, it's not going to feel like Superman. It's not going to, it's not going to feel like hanging out with your cool big brother, which is, I think, what a lot of people want Superman to feel like.
Well, there'll be a generation now that have grown up on the Nolan films as well. That's their Batman, or that's their version of Batman, and that is being held up as the gospel Batman.
Yeah,
and there is definitely almost like a generational divide sometimes. Like, people will go back and watch the Tim Burton one and be like, oh, it's dated, it's old, it's not right, he's killing.
Who are these people? Where do they live?
Kill them. Kill them now.
Find them.
Burn them.
I will find them.
But there is that, but then there's also the other side of that, where it's the Snyder bots, for lack of a better word, where it's like, this is the only version of this character ever. We can't have any other adaptations. They are shit in comparison. Rah, 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 rah. There is that side of the Snyder. Like, I was all for the Snyder cut. Like, I always want another cut of a movie, or I'll see a different version of it. But there was something. I don't know, but there was a. I mean, any movement will have some negative people in it, and will ruin it for anybody else. Anything really, political or otherwise, I think. And there was very much there was people like, oh, took a cracking shit, released the Snyder cut. There's things like that, and I was like, what's the point? Or recently, just within days of us recording this, people have been talking about BVS and talking about Jimmy Olsen, and that Jimmy Olsen was a loser, was shit, was not a character until Zack Snyder brought him in and killed him.
Yeah, obviously I don't agree with that. No. I don't like. I did see a tweet that said, "Oh, no one cared about Jimmy Olsen before, or no one knew who Jimmy Olsen was before BVS," and that's not
bullshit.
True. But like, Zack Snyder, it's not that Zack Snyder doesn't understand these characters. He just has a very specific take and a very specific vision.
Yeah.
Just like Matt Reeves has with Batman,
Absolutely,
just like Christopher Nolan had, like Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher.
It's an adaptation, and there are always going to be changes. There's going to be, different ways of looking at it, different ways of using the character. I think Batman is probably the one that you can play with a lot more. You can have a horror Batman story, you can have a gritty crime thriller, you can have a silly kind of 60s version, that kind of Adam West kind of comedy version of that, or parody.
Well, within 5 years we had The Batman and Lego Batman.
Yes.
Which
Yeah. And I think the Lego Batman and The Batman are two of the best Batman films that has ever been made.
Oh, sure. Exemplary.
Yeah.
But I think we can get, as fans, we can get overly obsessed with canon and what counts. Like when people say restore the Snyderverse, they mean very different things. I don't think anyone's saying like just make Zack Snyder DC films, because he's only got so many hours in the day. But I think a lot of people are sort of compartmentalizing in their heads which DC films count and which don't. So for some fans, like everything after 2017, for want of a better word, Justice League onwards, doesn't count and gets sort of like parceled up in its own little continuity.
But there's nothing wrong with that as well. Like, DC does that great with all in the comics with the Elseworlds stuff. Me and Dennis have talked about Elseworlds on the podcast as well, and I love all the multiversal different takes. Like bloody Batman as a King Arthur Knight of the Round Table. I love that shit. I can eat that up all day.
Yeah.
So and there's nothing wrong with different continuities. There's several different continuities. Marvel and DC are going full into this and doing multiversal stuff now.
And it's great because we as fans, we get to have our cake and eat it, which is perfect. But
we're getting two Batman in one film this year.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it's been delayed, but that is still occurring.
For sure, but I think we should embrace that and be grateful for it, but just not use canon as a stick to beat other fans with. Just because we happen to disagree with them, which is best.
Just because something is canon doesn't necessarily mean it's good.
Yeah,
like I've read a lot of stuff that's in canon and it's garbage.
For sure. Yeah,
and that's it. And the same with films. But I think you just have to kind of, like you said, just appreciate a film on its own for its own merits, like you said. And when you introduced me to the Ultimate Edition of BVS, like I wasn't massively keen on it when it came out. I was a bit confused, wasn't sure. Like you said, it is bombastic, I think is the word, and it's coming at you and it's exploding and it's an IMAX. And when you showed me the Ultimate Edition, I did enjoy it more because it felt more like a richer experience. And coming back to it again and watching it in 4K, which was
that's something I wanted to talk to you about actually. So you saw it at the cinema, and then I think you saw the Ultimate Edition with me.
Yeah.
You've not seen it since then, have you?
No,
You've watched it with me both times, which is lovely.
Yeah.
Very special.
I'm
really, we've kind of all sort of organically transitioned into talking about BVS, so let's ride that wave.
Let's go.
So obviously I got everything set up, and it was just to piss on my chips. It was a gloriously sunny day, and I'm like, we're trying to be nerds.
Let us leer in the dark.
Fuck off, nature. We want to watch Batman v Superman.
You should be enjoying this nature while it's here. No, not in Manchester. We like it rainy and dark. And
we want it to
iron
grey skies and torrential rain. Thank you very much.
Just imagine Manchester, but just as the battle of Batman and Superman. It's that weather all the time in Manchester.
That would have been perfect.
But I have to admit that the Ultimate Edition is the best way to watch it. For me, one of the biggest problems I have with the film is the take on Lex Luthor, but this version fills in a lot of the plot holes, a lot of the problems, because it felt like it was, like you said, like I have issues with both of these films in regards to pacing towards the end and the kind of the turnaround of people going, I really don't like you, I'm going to punch you, bah! And then, oh, we're mates again, it's okay, we're mates. And that's one of the issues I have, but with this huge subplot about the Bullet, let's just call it the Bullet subplot, which adds a lot. It reminded me of the director's cut of Daredevil, because there's a whole Coolio plot, which, again, adds to the film, adds layers to the characters, adds so much more to it. It makes it a better film.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is like that. It gives Lois more agency, because otherwise in the film she's not there a whole lot. She doesn't do a whole lot. Amy Adams is great. I think all the acting in it is great. All the people playing those roles do the absolute best that they can with the part, with the script, what have you. I think they're great. But yeah, I just had a lot of problems with the kind of, there were just rushed moments. There was things like, Batman and Superman are on the same page. They know each other's identity. They know what the plan is, things like that. And I'm not saying that they're all fixed because of the Ultimate Edition, but it is the best way to watch this film. And do enjoy it much more. And it's a richer experience. And the little details I noticed going through it, I'm like, oh, there's Nyazev, there's KG Beast in the background in that scene where Lois is going up an escalator and the woman coming down is the witness. And if I saw that shot in the original cut, it wouldn't have any of that effect.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention there's a wonderful podcast called BVS by the Minute, which goes into incredibly granular detail on this film. And it literally it's about 15-20 minutes per episode, and they talk about a minute of the film at the time. And they just go into how much is stuffed into every frame, the symbolism of it. So if you ever wanted to know what horses represent in BVS or drinks represent, that's one thing I do remember off the top of my head. Sort of drinks represent lies or deception, or in some cases willful deception. So it's interesting when someone rejects a drink, like Senator Finch refuses Lex's bourbon, but also Diana refuses to accept a glass of champagne from the museum curator as he's feeding her what she knows to be a lie about Alexander the Great's sword.
A beautiful lie.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought that was a really cool little moment, and it just goes into the sort of the depth and the nuances, and because Zack Snyder comes from a sort of like classical art background, so he's always hiding like double meanings in everything, in visuals, in dialogue, in the composition of shots, and it's something I really appreciate.
I do remember when they did decide to give Zack Snyder Man of Steel. I always remember this, and someone put it on the social medias again. And again, I like Zack Snyder. I like his work. I don't think all of his work is great. I do not like Sucker Punch at all. I think that's just atrocious. But he has a style, he has a look. And he has, it's like a Tim Burton movie. Tim Burton has a very definite style. By looking at it, it's a Tim Burton movie. And by looking at Zack Snyder, it's a Zack Snyder movie. But I do remember when he was doing Watchmen, and he was like, I didn't really like comics when I was a kid. I used to read things like heavy metal and stuff where, there was tits out and there's uber violence and stuff. So I'd go and read like Superman or X-Men or something. I'm like, where are all the tits and violence? And I was kind of like, and that's what I thought going into kind of Man of Steel. But again, I really like Man of Steel. I really, really, really like Man of Steel. Again, there's things about it I don't like, or there's twists and turns on the characters, adaptations on that character and the changes. Some of the changes they make, I'm like, not for me. But that's fine. That is a take, and if you like that take, that's fine as well. But I do remember that like screaming out to me at the time. But again, I think he's a visual master.
Yeah, and I think we need to recontextualize that quote as well, because he was talking about his teenage self there.
Yes, yeah, of course. And he's talking about Watchmen. He's talking about what the adult impact of Watchmen, the mature storytelling of Watchmen. But yeah, no, I agree. But it always stuck out to me. I was like, they're giving that guy Superman.
Yeah, and I think that, and I get that that's jarring, because like he has sort of like come to comics that have lost their innocence, and so when people want that innocence put back into comics, he can't really do it. I mean, you could argue that there are elements of that in Zack Snyder's Justice League, but that whole, as because that's another thing we need to remember. This was intended to be a 5-part saga, and
2-part Justice League movie, wasn't it?
I think he wanted to do 3, but that was the original pitch, is 2 parts. And the plan was for other directors to take those characters and then do their own thing with them. So it was that's another thing that people forget. It was always meant to be sort of Zack Snyder laying a foundation, and then other directors doing their own thing. Like, say what you will about Aquaman, it's very much James Wan's film.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
say what you will about Wonder Woman 1984, it's very much Patty Jenkins' film.
Yeah.
And you can't be one of these people who's like, creative freedom for artists, just for like the artists you like James Gunn, for example, is a very idiosyncratic filmmaker. And you know, The Suicide Squad, I think, is a great film by any metric. You know,
if it's not a DC film, it's still a great film regardless. And I think that's one of the things that DC has over Marvel, is that Marvel do it's kind of almost like a factory. It's a factory situation where they're like, we need this out by this time. Who's the director that can do that in this way, at this style, within this time frame? Now. We've got a plan. We've got to stick to the time frame. Do. And DC are very much not like that. So, you know, one of the issues I have with a lot of the MCU films is they do, no matter who's directing them, they do have a set look or a set style or a set colour palette when you're watching them.
I think from like phase 2 onwards, because I remember when before the first Avengers came out, I remember, so I saw like obviously Iron Man 1 and 2, Incredible Hulk, Captain America, Thor. And I remember thinking like, how are they going to marry these very disparate feeling styles? Yeah. And then for better or for worse, I think the first Avengers became the template.
Yeah.
And in some respects, I think that, and they certainly set the standard for what audiences expect from comic book films, which goes back to the point I made, you know, with caramel lattes and Montepulciano, you know. So that is definitely something that I think has had an unexpected sort of impact on audience expectations, and certainly critical expectations, because let's not forget, most critics, especially critics of an age, aren't really comic book savvy. And
they're just thinking, oh, it's what is this weird character?
Yeah.
You know, and what is this? Why is Pip the Troll turning up? Who is he to do with whatever? You know, I get that. And there's been a lot of occasions where, obviously, you know, we talked about on Nerdify and stuff, where a lot of the Marvel directors have walked away.
Yeah, Patty Jenkins walked away from Wonder Woman. From Thor to do Wonder Woman. From Thor too,
and bloody Edgar Wright walked away from Ant-Man.
After years and years and years of pre-production,
and, you know, Joe Wright's script as well, and all this other stuff. So there is sometimes, I think, on the Marvel side, it's like this is a factory. We need to get these out at a certain time, and DC, as they are prone to do, will delay movies. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because they want them to be of a certain quality. They want the marketing to build up to that as well, and they want it to be good. And I don't ever
unless they want their bonuses before the end of the year.
Okay.
In which case they will fuck a film raw and shove it out.
We love Warner Bros. Honestly.
I'm holding my hands up. When I first saw the theatrical cut of Justice League, I was off my tits on happiness. I was so
I enjoyed it.
I was so excited to see those characters together.
Probably enjoyed it more than BVS, and there's still a lot of the stuff in. I remember I posted after I saw the Snyder cut. I was like, "Here's the stuff I actually miss from the Joss Whedon one." Again, there's moments in every superhero film that I love. Despite on the whole whether it's good or a bad film, they'll go, "Oh, that was nice. That was a nice touch, or a nice, callback or reference or continuity, whatever it may be, or an effect." There's always something I can pull the positive out of anything, and the Snyder cut again is superior, much like the Ultimate Edition is superior. I don't know again if it compares to what the other Marvel films, but again we don't want to necessarily do that, but we are doing it here, and that's the point. But I do believe BVS on repeated viewings of the Ultimate Edition has improved in my eyes, definitely.
Yeah. So you something you mentioned when we were watching it, it's the little bits that you notice, and that's something that I've certainly got out of the film. It's just the little nuances, especially performance. Like I think Henry Cavill gets a really, really raw deal in terms of how his performance is perceived, because you get all these comments about emo Superman or mopey Superman, and I think there's just so much going on there. And what really what does raise my hackles is when people say, "I can't believe Superman only gets X amount of lines of dialogue," because the quality of a performance is not measured in lines of dialogue, and we need to get out of this mentality that if somebody doesn't say out loud what they're thinking, it doesn't count.
Well, I mean, look at Arnie in the Terminator. He's only got like 30 lines in that, and again, it's a Hollywood making role for him.
It's an iconic performance.
It's the most iconic character and performance in one of them in all of cinema. And again, it's the physicality, it's the performance, not the lines. They're there. They're just there, But again, I think as well, there's a lot of complex ideas in BVS that are being addressed. And I don't think... Not only does Lois get more agency in the investigative reporting, it all gets kind of fleshed out, but Clark is also
very much so,
seeing what the Batman is doing, and you get a bit more of kind of his reasoning why he goes after the Batman.
Because without that first confrontation between the two seems to come out of nowhere.
Absolutely.
But it's really well contextualized with this idea of you can't reason with someone like this. You can the only thing you can do is apply brute force, and that's what he tries to do, so without laying a hand on him, But I think the film's greatest strength and weakness is that it's not afraid to deconstruct in order to reconstruct its heroes. It's not afraid to make them fallible, because what's the age-old thing with Superman? Oh, well, he's not relatable. So, okay, let's make him relatable. Let's make him human. Let's make him a kid from Kansas who is uncomfortable being viewed by the world as an icon, who's uncomfortable with everyone having expectations, of everyone wondering what his deal is, of everyone sort of like trying to tell him what he's here for. And I think the film does that really well. And I love the way that the media is used sort of like the Greek chorus, They're not only, they're telling you what's going on, but they're also lending it commentary and context. And
I like what you said as well, because I didn't realise until we were watching it that all the pundits and commentators and news people are all real news people.
Yes.
They're all they're not just actors, they are news people that exist in our world. And I think, given obviously the flights of fancy and the over the top aliens flying around and creatures and all sorts, I think it does aid the kind of adding to a realism, and it grounds it a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's just a little thing, but it really does add and help with the storytelling on a whole.
Yeah, and I think visually it's a really visually beautiful film. I mean, we tried to shut out as much sunlight as we could, but but again, because it borrows a lot from Dark Knight Returns, which has, especially for its time, a very unconventional, subtle color palette.
Well, it was produced by Nolan, wasn't it, as well?
Yes.
So and written by Goya.
Yeah, and shot by Larry Fong as well, who shot Watchmen and 300. So it's a very nuanced color palette. It's very dark, but also there's a lot of, especially because the version that we saw has been regraded.
Yeah.
So just little things like, I noticed the reds are a lot richer, but also you got those wonderful IMAX sequences, like the Nightmare sequence with all the parademons. But and as well, like a lot of the things that people called plot holes or said made no sense at the time, I think in the context of the Justice League that we were supposed to get has been kind of vindicated a little bit.
I think Ben Affleck is, like when it came out, he was one of the best things in it. But I think it was really telling that they keep all of the Batman elements in. This is very much a Warner Bros. Thing because they know Batman and especially the Joker are a moneymaker for them. They know this. So it's always like, you want to put a bit more Batman in? Let's keep a bit more Batman in. And I think what you were saying is that a lot of the stuff that is cut, again, builds up to that confrontation. It adds so many layers to the actual fight. It's not just fisticuffs. It's not just, battering each other silly for no real reason. You get to see Clark, looking at the brutalness. You get, Batman brands a guy because he's a sex slaver, effectively, goes into prison and gets killed, immediately based on that brand. And Clark's like, what the fuck is this? This is insane. This is, how can this be allowed? How is this okay? And I do think Ben Affleck is one of the best things in it. I think all the actors get more to chew on in this version as well. Yeah. There's so much more kind of layers, and you get a bit more Perry as well. You get a bit more of the Daily Planet, which I love. You get a bit more of the kind of day-to-day. And again, I love the investigative, journalism aspect of it. And again, my main issue with the film, like, we'll talk about it now, but I'm not a fan of this version of Lex Luthor. I can see what they were going with. I can see that obviously they've cast Jesse Eisenberg because they want an evil Mark Zuckerberg or an Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos. And I get that. That's quite a relatable idea because I think if you look into any of those particular people too long and too far down the rabbit hole, you'll realize how not so nice they are. But I get it. But it's not, and again, I think you're right that I was coming in expecting a certain type of Lex as well.
We all wanted sort of a live action Clancy Brown version.
Absolutely, and I'm still waiting for that version. I really like the Michael Rosenbaum version as well. But yeah, it's definitely a take. It's an adaptation. It's not for me personally, but I can see why people would like it and get behind it. But I'm just a bit sick of in every movie, Lex has to be this, I'm a used car salesman. Oh, hello. It's this goofy humour, which I don't think goes with that character, that intense overriding jealousy and envy and hate and xenophobia that comes out in Lex. I don't think that comes out for me in that version. There is that. You can feel the disdain on some of the lines and some of the delivery, which is good. Yeah. And I was very much going into it going, he's going to be a goofball in his public face. Like, he's just going to be like, hello, Clark, and hello, you should meet this guy. Oh, he's got a funny handshake. Oh, he's a strong guy. Don't get in a fight with him. All that sort of stuff. I was just like...
When did Ken Dodd play Lex Luthor?
Feather duster. I mean, it's not far off. In some scenes, I'm like, wow, okay. But it's I love the scene with him and Holly Hunter, which you were saying, who's amazing in this as well. Yeah, it's really, really good, really strong.
One of the most overlooked. Her performance is one of the most overlooked elements of the film. I really think so.
Absolutely, and I think. The stuff with Lex that there's some scenes where I'm like, okay, this is a bit much, or I'm not really into this, but there's very much like that, almost like he's slightly on the autistic spectrum as well.
Oh, big time.
Which I kind of appreciate. I kind of like that aspect. But the one scene with her, I felt that was it for me. I was like, he's dropping that public face because he's not getting what he wants. Yeah. He can't manipulate her. She won't budge. There's nothing he can do. He can't bribe her. Because this is what he does. He gets what he wants. He's used to getting what he wants. Like you said, he's kind of like a spoiled brat, I think you mentioned. Yeah. And when he doesn't get his way, he's like, right.
He gets triggered.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think when he drops that public face, I like him more. But when he's... And again, it's not... I mean, it's not what I expected or thought it would be, but I wanted more of that in the film. I don't think we get that. Again, it's like, oh, look at my egg timer. Oh, we've not got long.
I like it for that reason. It took a while to grow on me, but I like it for that reason. It is this idea of a spoilt child who doesn't know how to react when his toys get taken away, and someone whose brain works so quickly it doesn't really translate into what they say, like in the speech. Yeah. with the because that would be paradoxical. But I really like it. You know, I can see, as with both these films, people have criticisms.
Sure.
I understand them. They're valid. They don't bother me personally.
fine.
And I think he's a great actor. He's making choices that may not be for everyone, but I get it. And there's a logic behind it. And I think I get the sort of the eccentric nature of it. I get the almost childish nature of it. I get the petulance of it because, again, it's that whole thing of the scarred child.
I guess as well that maybe they're trying to show the opposition between a Bruce Wayne billionaire and a Lex Luthor billionaire, like that dichotomy of the two different types of billionaire.
I mean, this is someone who is so fuck you rich that they have never had to bother modifying their behavior for anyone.
Yeah, that's
so that's the way I look at it, so Bruce Wayne has had to sort of like he's had to teach himself that public image. And you see him in the film, you see Ben Affleck slide in and out of that, and we all remember that sort of like goofball Ben Affleck era from like 2002. When he says that I like those shoes, you see it like slip in, that's something that's only Ben Affleck could have delivered that line in that way,
No, I agree. I think it's an interesting film. I think the music is fantastic.
Yes, thank you. That's something that I think definitely. Even if you don't love the film, I think the score has some wonderful moments.
You've got to appreciate Junkie XL, Hans Zimmer. Just for Wonder Woman alone.
Oh yeah.
That the whole Beautiful Lie song, but even the Batman theme's great. And I think the main theme's quite good as well. Yeah, it's just really good. Like when I really appreciated it this time, just listening to the music and just taking that in, and the way it's something unfortunately I don't always necessarily notice, and I think you only notice it in films. It's one of those things in films where if it's not there, you notice it.
Yeah,
and sometimes with music, I get swept along by the story, and I'm like, I can't even remember the soundtrack necessarily.
Yeah.
But, so it's going when it goes above and beyond, and I do know it, and I do hear it, and I do listen to it, and I'm like, oh yeah. That's when I know it's good.
I think for me, my favourite moment in the score is when Superman and Lois have that moment where he says, "I love you. This is my world. You're my world." And then he flies and he picks up the spear. And I remember on the Notified podcast, we talk about like how much effort that would have to be and how much that would hurt.
Yeah.
And so when people say
he struggles as well, you see him kind of as he takes flight, he kind of stumbles almost.
And when and that's something when people say, "Oh, this isn't Zack Snyder doesn't understand Superman." This is someone who we've seen like for over a year. He's had to deal with the slings and arrows of public opinion. He's had to deal with people ascribing agendas to him that he doesn't have.
Yeah.
He's had to deal with like he's seen the world hate him and chooses to give his life for it anyway. And I think that's just the most Superman thing you can get. And people say, "Oh, I didn't feel shit when Superman died." I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry you didn't, but like it certainly worked for me, and every time I watch it, it's still the score is such a huge part of that. Just the way it brings back that Man of Steel, the dun 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 dun, but then elevates it into this like heart-wrenching crescendo when he flies into Doomsday. And then you've got that moment where they're both stabbing each other, and it's sort of like a callback to Excalibur with Arthur and Mordred stabbing each other.
Yeah.
And it just this idea of he grabs this like jutting bony protrusion from Doomsday and drags himself into it. That's as Superman as it gets for me. And I get you can argue they rushed into the death of Superman. Okay, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
For me personally, I get why they did it. And
you could argue maybe they shoehorned a lot of the Dark Knight Returns in there when it doesn't necessarily fit. Like, because one of my issues with it was that there's all these vague references to like 20 years in Gotham, but nothing's really explored or explained, or like it was almost implied that he kind of retired and came back, and all these things he's been doing. I do like the idea that he's like Alfred states, he's jealous and he's grown cruel and he's branding people.
Well, it's this idea of getting jaded, and it's like you see it in real life in police officers. You do see people get jaded by seeing humanity at its worst every night for 20 years. Like, what does that do to a person? And of course they're going to get risk averse. Of course they're going to think that if there's a 1% chance that the human race could get annihilated, you've got to be the one to do the thing that no one else can or will do. It's like. And if that's, if that gives you an existential feeling of dread as a Batman fan, good. It's supposed to.
That's the idea.
And the one, I think the biggest criticisms, other than like ridiculous shit like it's got too much film grain, or that Lex Luthor's Jim Carrey's Riddler, because they've got both long red hair, whatever. Like this idea of it's not real Batman because Batman doesn't kill. We've seen lots of versions of Batman killing on film. Even Christian Bale's version, who talked a great game about having one rule.
Oh, he killed.
He kills seven. Like in Batman Begins, he kills a room full of ninja people after saying, "I'm not an executioner." Murder? Fuck no. Manslaughter? Maybe.
Mass murder, genocide.
Well, he also he kills Talia. He shoots the truck that she's in, and again, he does the exact same thing that Batman does in BVS. Like, he shoots cars that people are in. If that car blows up, sorry, not my problem. Like, and something I noticed in the bit with KG Beast. When he shoots the tank, the only reason KG Beast dies is because he pulls the trigger on the flamethrower to try and kill Martha.
And it sets it off.
Yeah, then that's what sets it off. So, like, he puts people into... And, if you've taken the pin out of a grenade and he knocks it out of your hand and then kicks you into a room, he's got bigger shit on his mind than, like... I think people just have unrealistic expectations in terms of, you've got to save the bad guy. And it's like, okay, ideally, yes... But this is... I mean,
I love the Spider-Man films, but basically all he ever does in that is jump out of the way of things. And the villains die. He's like, oh, okay. You're trying to kill me? Oh, I jumped out of the way. I jumped out of the way. I tried to kill Venom. I was just trying to kill the symbiote. Oh, but you jumped into the explosion. All right.
While we're on the subject of that, how much of a piece of shit is Harry Osborn's butler? Like,
absolutely.
He's like,
Bill Paxton's dad.
I saw your father was killed by his glider, sir. It's like, fuck you saw me for 6 months taking this green shit.
Yeah. Look at my face. Let alone look at my face, man.
You're a monster.
It's been years.
I love you, sir.
I'm sorry. I cleaned his wound that night.
Why didn't you think it was a good idea to tell me this?
Dan, that is another podcast in itself, and maybe we will do that one day.
I like Spider-Man 3.
Maybe Amazing Spider-Man 2 versus Spider-Man 3 might be one we could do. The best of the worst.
But again, like, when I'm such an easy lay when it comes to this stuff. It's like like pizza. When it's good, it's very, very good. When it's bad, it's still pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of the same, but. I love that Batman sequence. That Arkham video game Batman sequence is incredible. I think it's one of the best bits of Batman you've ever seen. Again, I think, there are some kind of holes in the storytelling or jumps in logic sometimes. Again, I think both films have an issue with that towards the third act or the finale, where it's like, okay, we're here now. We need to be here. We need to move the story along. Like, I remember you saying the first hour is like a really... it's a lot of the stuff they cut is that first hour from BVS, and that is all the plot and the build-up. But again, you don't get the satisfaction of those battles and those scenes at the end and the sacrifice without that build-up.
Yeah.
So I do recommend, if you are going to watch BVS at all, ever, to watch the Ultimate Edition. I think, like you said, that's the only one available, I think.
I think if you're American and you've got HBO Max, I think that's the only one available. If you get the new sort of remastered 4K with IMAX, that's the only one available. You can get the theatrical cut on Blu-ray and 4K. No, so just on Blu-ray. I don't think you can get it on 4K.
No. But I think, on the whole, I love Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman as well. Like, she comes in... absolutely, just steals the show. I genuinely think she would have made a good Catwoman as well, because those kind of scenes with Bruce and her in the kind of galas and stuff.
Well, I wonder how much of... Because the marketing showed Wonder Woman pretty early, but I wonder if they were kind of say, because they do set it up so that it seems like because she's at these where all these sort of like high value arts and antiquities are. I don't know if they were trying to sort of like fake out the audience until like she gets off that plane and the flight attendant shouts, "Oh, excuse me, Miss Prince," and I don't know if audiences were meant to go, "Oh shit," but then. Obviously, she was front and center in the marketing because why wouldn't you show that you've got Wonder Woman in your film?
Absolutely.
But maybe the marketing was at odds with the filmmaker's intention there. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Like there's, it's. I don't hate it as vociferously as some people out there, and I don't think it deserves as much hate as it gets. I think the fight itself is good. I think a lot of people complained about the length of it, but I don't think as much as we like. I kind of get a bit sick of it myself sometimes. Like, who would win out of Swamp Thing and Man Thing? Who would win out of this? Like, I enjoy that. Who's faster, the Human Torch or Angel? I also get a bit fucking sick of it. I was like, whichever one the writer wants to win,
basically
is that. Like, if they're guesting in the book, they're going to lose a lot of the time. If it's Punisher versus Wolverine, Punisher will win if he's in his book, or vice versa.
Yeah,
I do get a bit sick of that, and then you can't predicate the entire plot around that, and you can't have an extended fight sequence because it's going to get boring.
Yeah.
It's going to get dull. Like, look at things like Hulk versus Wolverine and Hulk versus Thor, the little mini animated movies they made. They made them short for a reason.
Yeah.
And even then, the main plot, the main villains are not each other. There's always an overarching plot. So I think you need that. And I think the length of the fight is long enough. I don't think you need any longer than it already is. It shows that Batman is capable. It shows Superman is capable.
And it crucially, it shows that Superman does try and reason with Bruce, but he's both physically and psychologically got himself into a state where he has had to dehumanize Superman because he's got that line, you were never even a man.
Yeah.
He has to turn him into a problem, a thing, because that's the only way he can do what he does. And that's why I think, and I want to hear your opinions on this, but that's why the infamous Martha moment, it works for me. Because,
why did you say that name?
Well, but the thing is, like, a lot of people say, he says their mums have the same name and they're instantly best friends. It's like, they're not best friends.
No.
That's not at all what the film is trying to do. Don't be disingenuous.
No.
Like, it's showing, it's recontextualizing this alien, this thing, this potential monster, this monster in waiting. It's recontextualizing it as a him, as a human, as a mum who will miss him. And the coincidence that they have the same name means that he can relate to that character more, and B, it means he gets the chance to save our Martha, which he never got to do before. And one thing before I forget, I want to touch on is toxic masculinity, which I think this film does feature, but very deliberately. And I think a lot of people at the time took it at face value and sort of read misogynistic or toxic male subtext onto Snyder and the film. But sort of one of the big moments that pops out to me is this idea of when the Waynes are held up, you see Thomas Wayne's fist clench and he launches himself at Joe Chill, and that's when he gets shot. And I think it's that idea of Bruce has been programmed by that moment to respond to threat with violence, and that is Batman.
Yeah. And he says that. He says that, he compares himself to Clark, who's like, I bet they thought you were this, they gave you this, they gave you everything. They bet you thought you were special, that you're going to lift up humanity. It's like, I got taught a different lesson. My parents died in the gutter. And again, that moment where they relate to each other on that, because, technically, continuity-wise, weirdly, they do both have, is in the continuity, is in the comics. That is correct. It's not something they just made for this film. And I quite like that they reference that.
Yeah.
In a sense. But no, I agree. I think the xenophobia of Batman and I told you this, but I used to do kids' parties. When the film came out, I went as Batman, and one of the kids went, "No, you're a baddie," because they saw Batman, and he is framed more so, and I think Iron Man as well is slightly framed slightly more as as a villain or antagonist than necessarily a protagonist.
Yeah.
And they were like, we want Superman, we don't want you. And I was like, and then one of them said, I was like, oh, he's an alien. So I went with the whole xenophobic thing. I was like, he's an alien, you don't want an alien in. And they went, no, he's a Superman. I was like, I was about to like go like, you don't know anything, kid. You don't. He's literally an alien. No, he's a man and he's super. Anyway, I'm getting paid for this.
But conceptually, they're right.
Yeah, they're all right. They are right. Conceptually, they're right.
Well done, kid.
They're not stupid. But I like that it's a gristled, grim, dark. Like they were like it kind of goes. You want a dark Batman? You're getting a dark Batman.
Yeah.
You're getting the darkest Batman you've ever had. You're getting the most screen-accurate Batman costume. You're getting the most screen-accurate armoured costume, which both look amazing. The two of my favourite Batman costumes on film. And I think Ben Affleck is great in the role. I like the voice thing, the voice kind of modulator. I like that. And yeah, and again, it takes Clark because he is a symbol of hope. He is a symbol of what's right. And like you said, he does what's right because it's the right thing to do at any point. And that's what Martha's saying, and and everybody else is saying. And he is, he's changed. Batman is changed from that experience.
But both Civil War and BVS deal with this central thesis of doing the right thing has consequences.
Yeah.
And if you do the right thing for the right reasons, people will still get hurt, people will still die. And that's why I love that moment with Jonathan in the where he's talking about the Lang farm and the horses dying.
Yeah.
And just one thing I want to before I forget, going back to toxic masculinity, Batman even has that line that's ripped straight out of The Dark Knight Returns. The world only makes sense when you force it to. Like force is the only thing he understands. And I think it's really, really wonderful that women are the people who save in this film. So you've got Lois. You've got very literally one, like Diana coming and saving Batman and turning the tide of that fight, but also you have Lois saving both Clark and Bruce. So she physically saves Clark,
twice.
But also she saves Bruce from crossing a line that he would have regretted for the rest of his life, and when the dark side invasion did come, he would have been like, oh shit, I went and did that.
She's the key.
Well, she is the key, and I think and that's another thing that I think got misunderstood, because I did see people say, oh, so if Lois wasn't around, he'd instantly become an evil murderer. It's like, no, if Lois wasn't around, he'd be vulnerable, and that vulnerability is all it would take for Darkseid to apply the anti-life equation and warp him into something else. And again, because that wasn't explained in dialogue, I think it went
explicitly,
over. And because it is quite a relative deep cut, like a lot of casual fans won't understand the anti-life equation or how it works. Then I can see why that nightmare sequence would be jarring. Again, it's a criticism I understand.
Sure,
I don't share it.
I mean, we could go on for just on this film alone.
We really
all
could.
Day.
Well, it's such a contentious film. There's so much to say about it.
We don't have time. We could talk about all the different characters. I love the Alfred in this, even though I'm not a particular fan of Jeremy Irons himself and his personal politics. I think he nails the Alfred role. Lawrence Fishburne again as Perry White. I think is great and is hilarious as well. But yeah, it's good. It's enjoyable. There's a lot to like about it. Again, not perfect, but no film is. But yeah, there's moments I can take or leave. But I think for the most part, I did enjoy revisiting it. I did enjoy watching it with yourself and in spectacular 4K that you've treated me to this time as well.
My pleasure.
Right, next up, Civil War.
I don't need your Civil War.
Yes.
Well, actually, I do.
You do. We do.
So, and again, I don't want to be one of these BVS fans that like, because again, we get a lot of. I see a lot of criticism for Civil War, like, it has no real stakes. Everyone's pulling their punches in that warehouse. In the airport fight. But again,
it's Avengers 2.5.
Avengers 2.5, but it's very much a captain. And again, it picks up from a lot of sort of thematic and narrative threads that come straight out of the Winter Soldier, and that's something I really like. And even though I think Cap is in the wrong in a lot of ways, I really like how consistent the character feels, and I think it really plays up to the Man Out of Time thing of, okay, well, this guy Hitler wants to commit genocide. We're going to stop him. That you can get on board with that, and you can feel good about it. You can feel jingoistic about it with a relatively clean conscience.
Sure.
if you're reanimated in the 21st century, at the tail end of the war on terror, then it's a very different story. And
very complex world we live in.
Yeah, and I think it, you know, for all the fact that it's a Disney property, I think it does go to some pretty ballsy places in terms of like sort of, you know, what does this American symbol represent in our time, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. Obviously, with, you know, all credit to BVS again, this does have a leg up on BVS. Obviously, BVS was kind of jump-starting the DC Extended Universe, as it's called, and obviously this had several films up on it.
Yeah, and a pre-established relationship between its protagonist and antagonist.
Absolutely.
Yeah, protagonist and antagonist.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Again, it's there's a lot of stuff set up in both films from the previous installment that we've mentioned, but what I really appreciate in this is if you look back and look at the journey of all the characters, you know, in all the films that came before, you can understand their reasoning from the sides they choose.
Yeah.
And, you know, I get that Natasha, after everything, would, you know, go to Tony's side. And I'm like, well, I know where Cap's going to go and we know where Bucky's going to be. But then, you know, where do these other characters fall? And what is it about them? And if you think back and you go, well, what's happened before? What happened to them? And why would they feel this way? And they've obviously taken the time and gone, right, you know, because arguably Iron Man's side is a bit more of a kind of the powerhouse team, as opposed to the kind of loner kind of rebels and what have you of Cap's side. But they're supposed to be the underdogs anyway.
Yeah.
So, because that's what the whole story about. It's Cap film, and Cap's always kind of the underdog in those stories. And yeah, I think it really works. I think the chemistry again is there, especially between Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. especially. I think if it wasn't there, the film would not work.
Well, I think as well, they have this relationship where you always want them to be friends. Yeah. Because when they are friends, they do it very well. But they've always had a bit of a tumultuous relationship, and they've always had ideological differences, and you know, like, as much as we can talk about what kind of a person Joss Whedon is based on his actions, I think this line of dialogue is, you know, everything special about you came out of a bottle. That's like, yeah, because of course, if you've spent, you know, your every waking moment trying to be the best sort of engineer that you can be, and to come up with things that no one else has come up with, and invent technologies that no one else has come up with, and then if you get someone who has had all their advantage, you know, injected into them, you know, it's like that Batman thing. You're gonna feel a little bit less special. You're gonna feel a little bit invalidated, and you're gonna feel a little bit resentful. Yeah. Especially when, as we see in Civil War, Tony has grown up without love or warmth from his father, who wouldn't shut up about Captain America. So of course there's going to be, like, even if you know it's not logical, there's going to be resentment deep down there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think Robert Downey Jr., who is, you know, he's charming as the day is long, but I do think he's technically a great actor as well. You know,
absolutely.
He's like someone like Jack Nicholson, you know, who's accused of being a personality rather than an actor. But I do think he has spectacular range, and I think we really do see that in this film.
And speaking of spectacular scenes, his scene with Tom Holland, I think, is a gorgeous. Yeah. Just like, again, like, you take that Batman scene out of the film, and it's just like, that's gold standard. And I think him relating to this new Peter Parker, laying it all out on the table, getting the sense of that character before the big, you know, punch up and everything, it's just a great little quiet. Again, it's the quieter moments that I noticed this time around in both films. It's the more subtle, like when at the end, spoilers for any of the films. It's probably a bit too late, but I imagine you've seen either one or both of these films, even if you haven't seen the Ultimate Edition of BVS, where Howard Stark recognizes the Winter Soldier as he kills him. Yeah,
that's, again, like we talked about, little moments having such power, and that's something that I'd forgotten about. It's been a while since I've seen Civil War, but yeah, that was a little oof. Yeah, that was just a gut punch.
I was like, because it's very muted. The sound. It's like Sergeant Barnes.
Yeah,
and it's like his question, because obviously he's just been hit in the head and he's like confused and he looks at him, and obviously Winter Soldier. And what I like as well, and what makes it even more brutal, is how casual the flashback at the beginning is.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's just another mission. It's just casual. The Winter Soldier's just doing his thing. He gets awakened by the words and everything, and that's it. It's like, bam, punched a car. That's it. Here's the thing that I got out of the car.
Yeah, you think it's about the serum.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just like, here's the serums. Got the serums. Good. Got mission done, accomplished. But it's only the reveal at the end where you think that it only makes that flashback all the more colder and precise, because that's kind of the way the Winter Soldiers looked at it, because it's like, this is my objective, I must complete the objective, it doesn't matter who gets in the way, what happens. And we don't see that because he's got no emotional connection to those people as the Winter Soldier. As Bucky here clearly does. And you remember, there's a beautiful line in do you even remember them? I remember every single one. And that comes into play in the miniseries, the Falcon and Winter Soldier miniseries as well, where he's he's taking care of the dad of the son he killed.
I really like that,
which is another touching,
I was hit and miss
moment
on the series itself, but that was one aspect that I really enjoyed about it.
Absolutely. And I think it's really, really good. And I think, like, one of the complaints we had was for this film was that, one of my friends said, I don't buy Bucky. I don't buy that Captain America would do all this for Bucky. And I went, no, he absolutely would, because that's the foundation of this trilogy, is Bucky. Like, without Bucky, there's no trilogy as well, because that's his grounding point. That's his go-to. That's his best friend. It's the only link he has to his former life. Becky's gone. She dies in this film. And that adds to the need for him to have Bucky in his life, because that's it. That's everybody else is dead. This is all he has, and this world is new, complicated. It's different. There's nothing for him to relate to, and part of me did kind of want a little bit more in the Avengers of that, like, times have changed a bit, without it being like, I remember reading the Ultimates, and which is not my favorite comic by Mark Miller, and he's a little hit and miss for me. But I remember, like, he sees Colonel Nick Fury, who is Samuel Jackson, he's black, and he's like, a black man could never get that rank, and I was like, ooh, yeah, and I was like, I'm glad they don't have moments like that. But I think there could have been a little bit more of the play on that in the Avengers. But there you go. I knew there was a lot of Cap stuff they cut, but I think Cap is a hard character to get right. And I think Chris Evans is, I did a podcast quite a few years ago now about the best portrayals of comic book characters in live action. And Chris Evans, I think, gets the character. He does exactly what you want Cap to do and act like, without losing that coolness. He's not this hokey, like, finish your cereal. Even though there's that, even though there's that, like, in Homecoming, there's that, like, well, yes. When he pulls up the chair and stuff, and you've just had sex for the first time, that sort of thing. And but I think he has a lot of fun with the role, but then stays within those stringent guidelines. Like, I know, like Chris Evans, I know you said, Ragnarok is here and there for you, depending. But, Chris Hemsworth went kind of way off in a very different direction from what the previous character had been. Yeah. And took it. It's still Thor, effectively, but they've gone, okay, let's amp up the comedy a bit. And that's fun as well in its own way. But, like, Chris Evans is still that Cap from that first film, from the first Avenger. Yeah. It's still that character. He's been through a lot. He swears at the end, towards the end game and stuff, but he is still that character, and I believe that. And I think, again, that grounds this very over-the-top kind of big, you've got a giant man in this, a giant Ant-Man, if you will. And I think that you need that, this kind of struggle and this problem, this issue, and the fact that it gets so personal at the end, and it gets so kind of, it's like... Oh, it's like watching two friends fight. You're gritting your teeth because it's just so uncomfortable to watch. But you can't turn away though. You need. Well, I think
that's at the core of why a lot of people felt they could relate to Civil War much more than BVS, because you have Bucky as this catalyst that makes it more personal than ideological. Like, there is an ideological difference there as well, because it's all about the Sokovia Accords and this idea of superheroes having more accountability. But the introduction of Bucky into it and him being responsible for the death of the Starks, that makes it much more personal, much more visceral, and much more relatable. So when you have that, I mean, you could argue that the airport fight is sparring, and you wouldn't necessarily be wrong, even though they're using guns and explosives
Missiles,
and
yeah.
shit. Yeah.
Throwing planes at each other.
But then you've got this much scrappier fight between Bucky, Cap, and Iron Man, which does feel much more high stakes, and there are lasting stakes for that fight as well. And I think this idea of Captain America sort of being this person who's used to being on the side of the status quo, and he's just seen in The Winter Soldier what can happen when the status quo shifts beneath you. The political landscape sort of shifts around you, and what you thought was the unwavering, immutable word of the law and goodness is actually corrupted. And so, you understand that, it's all well and good making ourselves accountable, but governments are run by people, and people have agendas, and agendas change. And so I get this idea of like, well, what if they want us to go somewhere and we can't? What if people die because we were told, no, just, sit on your hands or go here instead? And at the same time, like, I like this idea of Tony Stark who was, the original sort of privatist. In Iron Man 2, he literally says, I've successfully privatized world peace. Comes back to sort of like, no, we need to be accountable to somebody because, we need to stop, because of my personal guilt.
Yeah, exactly.
We need to stop this from happening.
What you've done in your previous films, what's happened to you has informed this choice now, and this change you're making, and change you want to make for the world. And like Age of Ultron, he wants to put a suit of armor around the entire world.
Yeah.
And this is kind of sort of that in a way, in a sense. Because
he's, again, very similar to Batman. So like the only solution he can think of to problems is to construct technological solutions to them, as opposed to punching them, But that's consistent. Like, and Robert Downey Jr. is so charming. You almost forget that he's drafting a child into a private army, which is kind of not okay.
Which is something Batman likes to do a lot as well. But no, I totally agree, and I was saying this to you on the day as well, that I think I'm not a massive. I like the idea of Civil War more than actually like that main storyline. I like the
comic.
The overarching comic, and the tie-ins were actually more interesting, and their takes on them than the main story itself. I think again, it's like it's fine, it does what it needs to do. But I think because going into this, because Robert Downey Jr. is the face of the MCU. It's like It's like all of a sudden making Wolverine be, more kind of decidedly, not as heroic as necessarily he initially was. And I think because people like Iron Man so much, and they're a huge fan of Robert Downey Jr. and things, I think they've softened him a little, not sending people off to, other dimensions and locking them up. They're not hiring supervillains and things like that. So I think they do soften it enough where it's kind of relatable. So in a way, I do think they improve on it somewhat. And they make it a bit more like, nobody's the out and out villain. In that Civil War comic, Tony Stark was the out-and-out villain, really. And all the characters that kind of side with him. But in this, it is kind of cut down the line, and you understand, again, why they make the decisions they do and why they do what they do within it.
Wasn't there a bit in the comic where Iron Man brings Punisher onto his team, and somebody says, "Oh, was Hannibal Lecter not available?"
No, that's Captain America.
Oh, is it Captain America?
Yeah, because he brings Spider-Man's injured because he's defecting from Iron Man.
That's right.
He kills the villains that are going to kill Spider-Man, brings them in, and they're like, "Shit, the Punisher's here," and then the Punisher kills two villains in front of Cap, and he starts beating him up, and he's like, "You never do this. You don't do this. Why don't you fight me back? Fight back." And the Punisher says, "Not you. I won't fight you."
Yeah, because he's a military man, isn't he?
Absolutely. And as totally, dichotomy filled, disparate two characters, he still has an appreciation for him. And after Civil War, after Captain America died, he actually dressed as him for a little bit to fight some neo-Nazis.
But that, and I think, speaking of the ending, like that's one thing that's crucially different is at the end of the comic, he turns himself in because he looks around at the destruction that the fights cause. Is like, oh shit, no, I need to be, I need to be brought to heel for this. Whereas in the film, he kind of like goes on the run, which kind of makes sense because it's that idea of no, the safest hands are still our own. And I think I do better when I'm autonomous.
Yeah, that's true. But I think you're right. I think that ends better. And I also think BVS ends better for Superman's sacrifice. I think the whole point of that story and the build-up, you need him to sacrifice himself in order for the world to miss him and to appreciate him.
Yeah.
And then when he comes back in Justice League, it's like, and even in Suicide Squad, there's lots of like people praying and there's merchandise and stuff. So within that universe, that had a real big knock-on effect in BVS. And again, so did this, all the different stuff in this. I love Zemo as well.
Yeah.
I think Daniel Bruhl he's what I expected Lex Luthor to be in BVS.
Yeah.
Like, he's dark, he's disturbing, he's intense. I also think they do it with less screen time. They manage to get across his plan, his idea, and it's a bit more understandable. Again, from the theatrical cut. I think now in the Ultimate Edition you get a bit more of that, but there's still a lot of scenes to kind of get there.
Yeah.
But I think with Zemo, it's like you only need the handful of scenes that he's in to get to that point.
And I think it's generally it's very well paced. I mean, it's a Swiss watch of a film in terms
absolutely.
of like the amount of characters it's able to juggle, and no one feels shortchanged, and you're able to bring in Spider-Man and you're able to bring in T'Challa.
Yeah.
And they have there's a reason for them to be there, and
they've all got an arc that is complete, and that, again, like you said, no one feels shortchanged. Ant-Man's there, and he's like, I'm just happy to be here, and that's fine, because that's very Paul Rudd to me.
Yeah.
And Hawkeye's there, he's like, I was retired, but I'm back. And again, you kind of welcome that, and you want that. And I one of the criticisms as well from the comic to this was that there's not as many people, and there's not as many things going on, there's not as many characters, it's not the full Marvel universe. And I was like, but this is enough.
Yeah.
This is manageable, and it's crazy, and it's weird enough. You've got a giant Catman, you've got a Spider-Man, you've got an Ant-Man all going on, and you still believe it and buy into it and believe this universe, which I think is sometimes the hardest thing for the general audience to understand.
Yeah.
Is all these weird and wacky things that the comics do. Every time I explain a comic to somebody, they're like, what the fuck happened in the comic?
Yeah.
So weird. And I'm like, they are weird.
Comics are weird.
Comics are weird. Hashtag comics are weird.
But that's speaking of the Catalyst, because that's one of the main differences, is the Catalyst, I think, works much better when it's like a routine, because I love that sort of James Bond style cold open with this new Avengers team, and they're getting the mission done, but they're having this little banter over the radio, and I really love that. And I love Elizabeth Olsen like wandering it up, but I love this idea of the accident happens, this like huge catalyst where people die just because for a fraction of a second someone lost control of this enormous power, whereas I think, as I recall in the comic, they were just like teenage superheroes being dickheads a little bit.
Yeah, it was like it was a version of the New Warriors that were reality TV stars.
That's right, yeah.
And they fight Speedball and Night Thrasher and all the other ones. Nova's not there; he's off in space with the Annihilation. But they kill a group of kids. They kill a school.
Yeah,
because Nitro's a guy who can explode and reform, and he blows up and kills a group of school kids. And again, there is that scene where there's a mother, much like in this film, that confronts Iron Man.
Because doesn't she throw an Iron Man action figure at him and spit in his face? Yeah, at the kid's funeral, as I recall.
Yeah, that's right.
That would have been that's one thing I would have liked to see. I would like to see her but Alfred Woodard's character, would like to see her throw an Iron Man figure, but like her son was kind of college age, so it wouldn't really make sense.
But I think the intensity of that really works, that scene, and
it's a beautiful little moment as
well. That's another comparison as well. That the characters that are involved in those big, massive kind of colossal events and destructive events are confronted by victims of those events. So you've got Wally and BVS without his legs, and he's lost his family, and you've got Alfred Woodard with her son and confronts that. So again, there are those similarities between the two films.
And I think it works better than the comic in Civil War because it's the fallout of something that Tony Stark was there for. So I think it makes much more sense for him to be willing to take extreme measures like recruiting a child. It makes it it's I think the film could have done more to sort of like question the moral implications of what Tony's doing in building this team, but I think it does a good job of sort of like showing why he's suddenly so zealous about bringing the Avengers.
I was going to use that word to describe Batman as well, the zealotry of Batman and Tony Stark, but again they both realize their mistake. It's not like they just go, I'm going to do this because it's the right thing to do. They go, no, because it's constantly questioned and people questioning them throughout.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that, like, you're not just doing this because you're doing it. You're doing, like, you're not just going to, like, Cap and Superman are going to do the right thing because they're going to do the right thing. But Tony and Batman aren't doing the wrong thing because they're doing the wrong thing. It's an approach and a way, and it is questioned and discussed. And like you said, I think it is quite mature storytelling in both. Like, it's not just like, here's Batman punching the Joker again, or here's Spider-Man swinging or anything. It's like genuinely, and that's what I like. I like the real world stakes, and I like the political kind of discussion, the ideological discussion is really, really, and the use of power, and when, you know, power is abused and when it's not used correctly. I think in both films they do address that in really mature and intellectual ways, which is not often something you see in big blockbuster Hollywood cinema.
Yeah, and I think with Civil War, it's one of those. I think it does the best sort of job. It has the best tonal balancing act. Yeah. Because I think the themes come across very well. The more mature themes, the little nuances of performance are great. But the jokes, when they do come, they do actually all land. I don't think any of them really feel cringy, which is a problem, I think, when we get to the latter half of Phase 3, for me personally.
Well, I was gonna say, like, another one of the criticisms of the MCU is that these more dramatic moments are often undercut by the humour.
Or Ragnarok.
But I think in this film, if anything, they go against it. And if anything, it is a more similar tone to BVS, where it's not as jokey, and it's not as like, oh, this is just fun, or, you know, there's lots of gags. There is humour to it. Yeah. There's humour in BVS as well, where there is some. But it takes it very seriously. It takes the tone, the story. You know, Zemo's story alone is horrific, and dark and really disturbing.
And I like this idea of he's sort of like a special forces unit that's clearly had to do some morally questionable stuff in the name of service, and so that's why he has this skill set where he's not above using torture, you know, or the threat of drowning to solicit information. But he's very, very specific about, like, he doesn't take pleasure from this. He doesn't want to do it. He'd rather not if he can possibly avoid it. Exactly. But at the same time, he has absolutely no compunctions about getting his hands dirty. Yeah, he's a really good villain.
Yeah, I think I'm so glad they brought him back for Winter Soldier and Falcon, and I hope they bring him back again. Another comparison is that there's 2 terrorist attacks on big political, like, embassies or whatever you want to call them, political buildings in both films, and which again forwards the story and moves the plot along as well. And it's heartbreaking. I think, again, that adds a sense of realism as well to these kind of daring do superheroics, that, you know, there is a cost and a consequence, and you can see people, and, you know, much like the audience for BVS, that people are very critical of Superman in BVS.
Yeah.
like they're like, well, he just flew away. I can't believe he just flew away after helping people. Yeah. It's like, well, yeah, what else could he do? He got them all out.
One of the weirdest criticisms I ever saw was, when there's the family that's on their rooftop and they've painted the Superman logo on the roof, and the woman, like, reaches up to him, and he's just kind of floating in the air. And I saw someone say, why didn't they show him, like, rescuing her? And it's like, well, so many reasons. One, it's like showing the iconography. It's Zack adding his sort of, like, art history background to the composition, but also, like, what do you think he's going to do, you tit? He's not going to be like, he's not going to just float there for a second and, like,
just look at it. Just look at it for ages. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of kind of stupid kind of criticisms, and I think what you were saying earlier, I think, you know, there's bad takes on characters, and I think within these films, like you were saying with the Cap thing, like, oh, all the good things about Cap are in a bottle. That is what a fan would say, like a really negative, toxic fan, or like, Superman's not relatable, he's too powerful. That's somebody, again, I'm not gatekeeping, but that's somebody who really doesn't get the character or get what they represent, and I feel like there is that, and I feel like, you know, some people will mistake Captain America for, like, jingoism and the stuff. Like, I can't believe it, I have to say this, but when Winter Soldier and Falcon came out, a load of people were like, John Walker isn't Cap. And I went, yeah, that's the whole fucking point of that character, you idiot.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be a bad replacement. He's an awful replacement. That is the point of why that character was created.
Yeah.
And they're like, can't even wear the same boots. Can't believe he's carrying that shield and stuff. I'm like, that's the fucking point. That's what they're trying to do and say. Like, they're just taking it on a literal thing. I saw a meme today as well where it's just people explaining the subtext of the film to me, where it's like at the end when Captain America is fighting Thanos in Endgame, he doesn't know that all the people are going to come in and the cavalry is going to save him. He just knows that he's got to stop Thanos and he's going to try it anyway. And I was like,
yeah,
well, yeah, that's in the fucking film. Why do you have to explain that to me?
I don't think our sensibilities lend themselves well to decoding subtext in this era.
No,
really
maybe not. But I was just like, why are you telling me? I remember the same with the Avengers came out, where where Loki's in Germany and he's saying everyone's got to kneel, and the old guy stands up and says, "I don't kneel to people like you, I never have."
Yeah,
and someone was like, "Wow, he was talking about World War II and Hitler."
Oh shit, really?
Oh, really? Fucking hell, I didn't know. Fuck's sake, just some people. Anyway, Civil War is good.
Yes,
it is a good film.
It is a good film.
It is funny. This is obviously constant podcast guest Dennis. He doesn't care for either of these films. Funnily,
that's interesting. I've never known anyone to not particularly care for either.
And he's a big Superman and Batman fan specifically, and he loves the MCU. And yeah, he just doesn't care for either of them. It didn't really go into any detail about it. It's just like, and I was like, fair enough. That's your opinion. But yeah, I think Civil War, like you said, it's I don't know how the MC managed to do this, because that's always the problem in like Spider-Man films. There's too many villains, there's too many characters, there's too many arcs, too much stuff going on.
Yeah.
But MCU have shit tons of characters and shit loads of stuff going on, even though it does have the benefit again of multiple films.
And I think that's it. I think they have less to establish.
Yeah.
And they know that the audience will go in having primed themselves. Probably by rewatching Winter Soldier or The Last Avengers and I think they do a good job of sort of building what they assume the audience already knows. And I also think that the MCU has much less heavy lifting to do in terms of battling people's preconceptions of these characters, because the MCU, a lot of people will come to these knowing nothing about the characters other than what's been established in the MCU lore.
No, that's right.
They won't be coming into this thinking, well, that's not the comic book Iron Man, or that's not, which, like I've not read an awful lot of Iron Man, but I do remember reading Iron Man comics from before 2008, and Robert Downey Jr. does bring a lot of his own stuff to the role, which then I think sort of bled into the comics.
Yeah.
Would you as more of a Marvel zombie agree?
Yeah, I think I mean, there's a lot of that character already established within the comics, and his his like alcoholism and his problems and his PTSD or whatever you want to call that. I think there's a lot of that, but I think Robert Downey Jr. added his own personal experience with substance abuse and everything, and what he's been through, and and it's almost it's kind of like a Mickey Rourke wrestler role for Downey Jr. It's almost like a massive comeback, and he's pulled himself up and he's reformed, and it's not unlike a Tony Stark story. And when they cast him, I went, actually, that's good casting.
Yeah.
Even back in 2008, I went, I know about Robert Downey Jr., I know about the story, I know about the history, so I was like, actually, that'll work. And I said, if they ever do Demon in a Bottle, he'll do it. But they didn't really do that. But
I don't think they really needed to, because I think as much as I still think that Iron Man 2 is the weakest MCU film,
it's still all right. When we rewatched it for Nerdify, I went, actually, it's not as bad as I remember.
But I do think it kind of it didn't specifically mention alcoholism, but it did kind of lean into this idea of like he's lapsing back into that hedonism. He's buying into his own hype, and it's coming at the detriment of his sort of his relationships with the people closest to him.
Absolutely,
especially sort of like Pepper and Rhodey. Speaking of Rhodey, we were having this conversation of should he have died in this film?
I like Don Cheadle. I like War Machine. Again, I've got friends who aren't really particular fans of that character, and they do think he should have died. I think dramatically, because of the amount of superheroes involved, but again, it's that balance, because again, you don't want to make Cap look like a villain, or Falcon or someone like that look like an absolute villain, unless you're going to actually make them a villain. but then, you do need some kind of stakes. And I think I think Marvel do a really good job with their trailers and their promotion, unlike someone like Sony or Warner Bros. To a lesser extent. But they shouldn't have put War Machine being injured in the trailer.
Yeah.
Because everyone went, right, he's either he's dead, or he's going to be dead, or he's going to be heavily injured. So we all knew that was coming.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I think they screwed the pooch on that moment, because I think that was a devastating, worrying moment. And again, the disdain in Stark, where Falcon comes up and he's like, "I'm really sorry, I didn't mean for that." Pew! He just doesn't even look at him, just like repulsor rays him to bits.
See, that got laughs when I saw it in the cinema, and I was like, "Oh, that's
I don't like that.
But one thing I will say is when he was falling and Falcon sort of like swoops and he doesn't quite get to him in time, the audience was silent in that bit, and I thought that worked really well. I think I wouldn't want to see him die necessarily, but like you said, I think if he'd been paralyzed and not be mobile again, so soon, 20 minutes later, and obviously more time has elapsed since then, and it's clearly showing that he's doing physio. But he, at the same time now, from Infinity War onwards, he's got like magic back brace, that makes him perfectly mobile again.
A lot of hand waving with that. But I do think if he was just he was on life support or something like that at the very least, and we didn't see him from a couple of films or something, and then we see him kind of limping, or he's got a cane or something. I would have been fine with that. But I don't think it was like. I feel like that. I feel like they needed that for Tony to not feel as bad as he does later on, almost. He kind of needs someone to say, I would have done that anyway, I'll follow you, because it was the right thing to do. I know it's the right thing to do. I don't regret my decision. I'm a soldier. I do what I'm supposed to do. I will follow orders, and that's what he did. But I kind of agree. I think that was probably one of the things that probably needed to change within the script. But I think it's great. I think the whole thing is very well balanced. I think the characters, again, the acting's superb. The acting character, the category is going to be really hard to choose between these two. But I think it might be time for us to get there. Are you ready? Yep. Here we go.
If I could just say something.
Shut the up, Hope, man. No one's coming to the theater for you. They're coming for me, the tortured badass who uses his company's technology to...
Yeah, this is totally the same thing that we're doing, except, we're doing it good instead of the way that you're doing it, which is awful.
Nuh-uh, it's not the same at all, because you see, my father...
Let me guess, he died tragically, and the trauma that resulted shaped your entire life. Samesies.
God damn it.
We also built up to this moment over the course of years and multiple films by fleshing out both characters and our relationship with one another. It looks like you're just opening with this.
If I might interject for
No one asked you! Oh, Man of Steel was garbage!
And we're back for our comparison. So we've been building to this for some time, years, hours, days, weeks, all of existence. Here it is. We finally decide which film and which heroes did a better job of telling us how to be superheroic.
I'm excited.
And so you should be. But yes, so first category, as you well know, Dan, for our comparison is the writing. So which film out of BVS or Civil War has the best writing?
Ooh, okay. So this is, I don't know, we might butt heads over this a little bit.
Uh-oh.
Because I think I know a lot of people out there will say that BVS is poorly written, or that it doesn't understand the characters, or what makes them special, or that the plot makes no sense. But I think there are some really, really wonderful moments. There are some really wonderful lines of dialogue. I think Lex's dialogue is very clever and well written. I like his wordplay. But at the same time, I think Civil War is incredibly well paced. As a script, I think it balances the characters and their motivations very well. Oh, come on, you've got to have an opinion. Is it just on me? Have I got to?
No, you're not. You're not purely deciding. We're both deciding. So we do it kind of a point system. So if we agree, or if you have a certain opinion, we can do it that way. But usually it's kind of I make a decision and you make a decision on every category.
Okay.
And then we kind of tally it up at the end. Again, I do have some tiebreakers if neither of us will budge from our positions. I will say that I think in regards to the villains, the writing of the villains, I think there's a lot more explicit with Lex. Like, he is very verbose and he's constantly explaining and talking and talking and talking. But I think like with Zemo, it's almost what he doesn't say.
Okay.
And it's more that intensity and that brooding, and his actions speak louder than his words. And I'm sure we'll get onto that with the acting as well. But I just think in regards to that part of the writing, that one is, again, like I said, there's less steps to that plan as well. Mm-hmm. And they I think you coined the word a lot of the time, like brevity.
Yeah.
I think the Zemo's plot and plan makes more sense while also having less to explain and less to do with it. And I think that's one of the strengths of that particular bit of writing. They just managed to get all those ideas across without, loads of exposition or dialogues. I did this and I figured this out and I did this and placed that. Again, there is a lot more of that in the Ultimate Edition. Yeah. There is a lot more the kind of, and that's what I like about the Ultimate Edition. It's the plan makes a bit more sense, and you can see the small little details of how he manipulates all the chess pieces.
Yeah, I think fundamentally the difference between the two scripts is one is about deconstructing to reconstruct, while the other is building on what has already been constructed and then deconstructing it.
Yeah.
So I'm
BVS definitely has the harder job. It's doing more heavy lifting with the writing, because you're introducing not only a new Lex, you're introducing a new Batman, a new Alfred, all that, the connection between Gotham and Metropolis just being over the harbour, which I quite like as an idea. I quite like that they're two very different locations, but still very similar and close at the same time. And that's what I like in a good superhero crossover.
You got to sow the seeds for the Justice League.
Yep.
You've got to nod at an impending threat that's coming.
Exactly. You've got Wonder Woman. You've got and again, I feel like it's got the harder task out of the two for the writing. And I think that's probably why, when it was cut for the theatrical cut, people are like, they're just ham-fisting stuff in, the emails and all the characters and the cameos and Darkseid and Steppenwolf and Wonder Woman and all this. Like, it can be a bit much. But again, they are... I credit to them for doing it, because I still think they do it in a good way. I don't think it's perfect. I don't think it's seamless, but I think they do a decent enough job that it sets the stage for Justice League and the further films.
Yeah,
there's enough there. As brief as it is, Civil War has had that already.
Yeah.
So again, they can just be like, this is the story. We don't need to go what Batman's done or how he's there and why he's cruel and, what Lois is up to and all this other stuff. It's a tough one. All of these categories are going to be insanely tough anyway.
I'm happy to concede that while BVS had a harder task, Civil War script works and flows better. Regardless of which cut we're talking about.
Sure.
And I think if a script's doing its job well, you don't really think about it.
Yeah.
It just seems like we've got a window on events that are just happening.
Sure.
Which I think Civil War does do very well.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, with the balancing, they do balance all of these disparate elements quite well, and I don't necessarily think BVS does it quite as well. However, I can still appreciate the script. I'm not like David Goyer is hit and miss for me. I think as a writer, I think some stuff he does is amazing, and then other stuff is like Ghost Rider. There's things like that, and I'm like, okay. I
think the script is more Chris Terrio than David Goyer.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's probably to its strength.
And I've forgotten, because there was something that David Goyer wanted to have that Chris Terrio cut out.
Okay,
I can't remember what it is now. It's going to bug me, but It was something more extreme, basically. Than what we got.
Like aggressive and dark,
I think
and
pertaining to Batman as well. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, I'm happy to give this one Civil War because I know that there's categories that are coming where I think BVS is going to mop up. So
fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
I'm not being like I'll let you have that one. But like, I'm willing.
You're not giving me a pity victory, Dan.
No. I'm willing to concede.
Yeah, you're more of a DC guy. I'm more of a Marvel guy. But I don't dislike DC, and you don't dislike Marvel.
No, I love Marvel.
Exactly, and this is all good shit. Like both films are good films, and they do a lot of things right. And I think there is a bit more. Just what's good is when somebody makes something seem effortless. Yeah. And I think Civil War does that better than BVS. That it's not, again, it is having to do that heavy lifting, but again, it's still doing, Civil War is still doing its own heavy lifting.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And, establishing and growing that universe already exists, but you don't notice it as much, or it doesn't feel as, I don't want to, not ham-fisted, but it's not as evident that they're doing, this is what they're doing to do this, to set up this film and Thanos coming and all this, and the divide and what have you. So, yeah, I think Civil War takes the cake on that one. I think. Fair play. So we can both agree on that. So that's 1 point to Civil War each.
Okay.
So next category is acting. So, like I was saying earlier, that both of these films I think show some very, like, this is actors absolutely in the top of their game. All the characters are done. Like even Eisenberg is acting his tits off.
Yeah,
whether you like it or not, he is acting his absolute tits off.
Yeah.
And I think there is,
because that's not you can't look at him and saying he's coasting through that performance, because he's making very specific choices.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And whether or not they work for you, Lex Luthor this version of Lex isn't supposed to be charming, and I think a lot of people were expecting charming, suave Lex, but this is just that little shit you just want to punch. This smug little
SOB.
Yeah, and who's just so again, like he's never needed to bother to learn social skills. He's been surrounded by yes men all his life. He's been free to let his prejudices just sort of like fester in his mind. So I think for all the fact that I'll concede that it doesn't work for everyone. I think it's a good performance. I don't think it meets the metric for a bad performance.
No, I don't think it's a bad. It's not my Lex or what I would want from a Lex, but it's still a performance. It's a good performance. Like, he's doing exactly what he was cast to do.
Yeah,
like that Lex is designed to be exactly that, and written to be that, that, and he delivers. He hits his mark as an actor. Again, the smaller, like I was looking at the smaller roles when we were watching it this time with Holly Hunter and Lawrence Fishburne and Jeremy Irons, and even they're absolutely nailing, again, even in their small screen time, exactly what they need to do.
I think with Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White, you really get that. Even when he's being mean to Clark, you do get that sort of love. Again, it's that sort of like tough big brother.
Yeah,
kind of
he's
thing.
like making fun of him, and like he's a bit boring or a bit bland and like milquetoast kind of guy. I love that
because I love the bit where sort of like Lois is kind of going back and forth with like what kind of like legroom she gets on her flight to Washington DC.
Yeah,
and but then when the shit goes down and she's like, I need a chopper, and it's not for a story.
Yeah,
and I can't imagine that's cheap and I imagine that newspapers in the digital age are sort of like scraping for every penny they can get. So
well, he says nobody reads newspapers anymore, doesn't he?
We can barely afford a bicycle. So I appreciate when he's like, get me a chopper, and he just does it, like, because she needs him.
Yeah, exactly.
Amy Adams, just faultless. I don't at all understand the criticism that she doesn't do anything, or I've seen some people say that Amy Adams is miscast.
I think she's a great Lois Lane. I think again, like I said, this version, the Ultimate Edition, I can understand what they're saying in the theatrical cut. I get, because a lot of her stuff has been left on the cutting room floor. A lot of that, her arc and her storyline is that kind of digging up the dirt on the specific bullet and things. So I kind of get it a little bit there. But in the Ultimate Edition, it's all there. It's all there for you to see. The performance is there.
And the one thing I really liked about in the Ultimate Edition is when she goes into Wallace Keith's apartment and she figures out that he didn't know he was going to die because he just bought groceries. And I know that's more writing than performance, but like, and the thing about how the wheelchair was lined with lead so that Superman wouldn't see the bomb, that was all like cool little things. But I think that again, I see people say that Amy Adams and Henry Cavill don't have chemistry, and I just don't agree at all. I think they are, you know, a professional couple in the sort of early to middle stages of their relationship who are finding their way, and yeah, I think her arc across Man of Steel, BVS, Justice League is. I think it's great. I can't think of a bad performance in the film at all. Even like the lesser characters like Callum Mulvey as Anatoly Knaizev,
Mercy Graves, Wally, the guy in the wheelchair,
Scoot McNairy, Kahina Ziri.
Yeah,
it's all good stuff.
It is good. It's good. Like they all, again, they're all doing what they need to do, and again, Batman. I think Ben Affleck is, you know, say what you want about the writing. I think Ben Affleck is a serious contender for like best on-screen Batman. I think you know
he's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
definitely.
I'm not one of these who likes to, like, it happens every week. Who's your favorite Batman? Who's your favorite Joker? And I'm not one for that. I'm not like, who's your favorite Spider-Man? I don't care. They're all good in their own different ways. The films are all good in their own ways, and they have good moments in everything. Every adaptation has some merit. But for me, he looks the part. The costume is great. You know, and he brings what I would expect from a Dark Knight Returns style Batman, almost like bordering on the fascism a little bit as well.
Burnt out, cynical.
Yeah. No, I think he's great. I think I do think Henry Cavill. I really do want to see a Man of Steel sequel, because I do think he's got more to do with that character. I would like to see more Henry Cavill Superman. I know it's always up in the air whether he'll come back or not, or whether he's too busy or is getting more offers elsewhere. But I would genuinely would like to see him in, you know, maybe a sequel of Brainiac or something like that would be amazing. I'd be well interested in seeing something like that, because I think he's not necessarily had as much of a chance to get to grips with this version of the character, but I like the work he's done already still. But I think there's something, I think he can. There's an opportunity to gravitate and to have his cake and eat it, his Superman, and like, because he loves the character, he's invested in that character.
And Justice League, like this whole like Man of Steel, BVS, Justice League, it was all about getting him to that point where he's earned his status as the sort of like the iconic, the sort of comic book accurate Superman that everyone's clamoring to see. But like the whole point was to make him have to go through these like trials and moments of self-doubt to get there. But I think it's a lovely performance. I think it's very nuanced. I think it's very difficult to act through that suit, so it's not so that suit can easily wear you. But I think he wears it and he acts through it.
He's got a lot of physical, like both him and Affleck have a lot of physical presence.
And even those little moments, like the little moments between Lex and Superman of sort of like, I don't know how to lose, you'll learn.
Yeah,
just those little bit that just give you little flashes of
little moments.
Classic.
Like I said, that one scene with Lex and Holly Hunter and the painting being hung upside down and stuff.
Amazing.
That's an amazing scene. And again, it's the quieter moments that I really appreciated this time. The acting I really appreciated as well. But again, we're talking a bit too much about BVS. Civil War's acting is very good as well.
I can't think of a bad performance in Civil War.
I can't. You know, the lovely touching moments between Wanda and Vision are so cute, and you believe that they would get to the point where they are in Endgame when they're in a relationship from these little moments.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that's too much of a jump, and I really like that. And they just lay the seeds for that really, really well. I think they do have great. I mean, we obviously know how tragic that relationship will become, but I think Elizabeth Olsen is one of the sort of like I won't go as far as to say she's overlooked, but she's
unsung heroes.
Yeah, but I think she's definitely she gives one of the best performances across the MCU.
Yeah.
I think as Wanda.
Oh god,
and I think we're going to see like that go to some really special places in the next Doctor Strange.
Can't wait. I think T'Challa's great as well. Chadwick Boseman, who's no longer with us, unfortunately. He brings so much gravitas and importance and kind of grace to such a new character, yet there's so many levels he's playing, the vengeance aspects and the political stuff and the heritage of Wakanda and everything, and
there's a quiet strength to him in Civil War, especially at the start. And all the way through, really, because when he does reach that, like, that mournful, vengeful sort of place, it's not like crying and garment rending. It's very quiet, very nuanced, but also very determined. Obviously, Scarlett Johansson, consistently excellent. Downey Jr. consistently excellent. Chris Evans consistently excellent.
Jeremy Renner, Paul Rudd. I'm always happy to see in anything.
Yeah,
Tom Holland is great again in bringing this very young, inexperienced Spider-Man to the screen, and one that is actually like, as close to a young person as possible, as close to like a 15, 17-year-old, and making it believable and not stupid and not feel like a kind of a bad version of Robin or something. There's a lot again, a lot of heavy lifting there. This was another tough one.
I really, and again, you've mentioned it before, but I really love that little scene in Peter's bedroom, where and just that little bit where he sort of like webs Tony's hand to the doorknob, and he's like, just don't tell her, I'll do it, just don't tell Aunt May, and he's like, all right, Spider-Man. Yeah. And it's like he like, okay, I get it. You might be 15 years old, but I can see you are
potential.
Yeah, I can see you are Spider-Man, and I think you've earned that name and that mantle.
Absolutely.
Can we call this one a draw?
Okay, we'll call it a draw because it's a draw for that one. So that's technically 3 to Civil War and 1 to BVS so far, technically. But we'll call it that.
Wait. Two to Civil War.
2 to Civil War. Yeah, 2 to Civil War, sorry. Yeah. So 2 to Civil War, 1 to BVS. So next is, I believe it's music, yes. This is going to be a quick one for me.
Yeah.
It's BVS.
It's BVS.
It's BVS all the way. Again, Beautiful Lie, the theme. Like I was saying, it goes above and beyond, so I remember it. With Civil War. I've heard it in all of the other Avengers films. I've heard that same sort of music. Like you said, I don't think Cap's theme is necessarily in that film. Maybe I'm not sure if we hear it.
I don't even know who does the score for Civil War. But I'm gonna have to look it up. Sorry.
But that is kind of telling, though. We know it's Hans Zimmer. We know it's Junkie XL because it is such an incredible score. And just off the Wonder Woman theme alone, I can't really argue for Civil War at all.
No.
So,
and I think BVS does such a great job of like continuing and recontextualizing the themes from Man of Steel. I love how Lex Luthor's theme is an inversion of the Superman theme. That dun, dun. Yeah,
it's got to be BVS. No brainer. Sorry, the composers of Civil War.
I'm gonna have to look that up because it's gonna bug me.
Not to worry. Well, while you look that up, let's go on to our next category, which is cinematography. So which film looks the best, Dan? Which film stands up to that 4K?
Oh, it's Henry Jackman who does this. Sorry, Henry, who does the score for Captain America: Civil War.
Related to Hugh Jackman?
Possibly not. But, it's not to say the Civil War score's bad.
No,
it's one of those things when it's doing its job well. You don't know it's doing anything at all.
Exactly,
unless it really, really does something that stands out.
Exactly.
And I think if Is She With You it was the only track in that score, it'd still win.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. So cinematography. So what film has the best look?
So when we're talking about cinematography, we're not just talking about like, I think sometimes people like just think color grading.
No.
Obviously, it's like shot composition,
exactly,
and just the mise en, like how it captures the mise en scène and tells a story visually. Again, I think this. I think for me, BVS hands down. I don't at all get the criticism that it's an ugly film or that it's like it is dark.
It is dark. I did still notice the darkness even when we watched it, in the very dark room in the 4K.
Well, I think with the 4K as well, because it's got high dynamic range, the dark is dark.
It's very
really dark, and the light is really light. So when you get to the end fight where there's like heat vision going off all over the place, and you've got reds and greens, and they really pop.
Yeah, true. True.
Though that said, like I know Civil War is one of those films where, especially the airport scene where everything's sort of like grey, cloudy skies and grey concrete, people like are very quick to point to that and go,
muted colours.
And look, it looks shit. But I think what really surprised me actually was how much the 4K and the HDR lends to. Because we watched it on Disney Plus, and I don't think I've seen it before in that format, and I do think that elevates the look of the film. Like the colors are a little bit richer, especially on the red on Spider-Man's suit. Really pops. I really like that version of that's costume design, but I really like the version of Cap's suit.
I think it's spot on.
It's not an ugly film by any means, but I think for me, BVS is the clear winner. I think it's just Larry Fong is a great cinematographer. I think he tells a story with light and framing, and I think you can see the in the Superman rescue scene and with the death of Superman, you can see Zack Snyder's art history background reflected in there. Like there's so many shots from BVS you can hang up on your wall, and whereas I think the cinematography, the shot composition, and like there's some lovely shots in Civil War. Like a lot of fans point to the Cap reflecting the blast of off his shield. That's lovely. That's well composed. A lot of fans,
straight out of the comic.
Yeah, a lot of fans point to T'Challa's helmet in the snow. Like he set that aside while he goes to talk to Baron Zemo. That's great too. But I think by a comfortable margin, BVS is the winner here. Feel free to disagree.
I do not disagree. I actually do think, again, there is something. Again, there is this continuity in this universe building and this kind of set. This is the style. This is the way we're going. Again, I think Marvel, obviously, they want the directors to a point to do their own thing, but there's still a specific target they want those directors to hit, in a specific look and a specific style that kind of bleeds into the other films. And I think that is here in Civil War. Again, it does look good, it does pop, it does look great. There are those moments again, like even Zemo drowning the guy in the sink, stuff like that, and just the top down on that is great. It is a gorgeous film, and again, like you said, those kind of moments towards the end as well, and the darks, and it is a good looking film. But I think no other DC film looks like BVS. Let's be honest. And I like that. I like that there's something special and unique to that. And that's again, like what I said earlier. I think like DC does that. They do the kind of the one shots are kind of better for them, and they have a better handle on those. And I think Marvel has a better handle on the continuity.
I think
within the universe,
in terms of visual diversity as well. So you've got like Zack Snyder's films, which are shot on 35mm, so there's grain. But there's also lovely richness to the visuals. Whereas if you look at something like Aquaman, then it's incredibly clean, very very digital,
bright,
but like bright colors, incredibly bright colors, very vivid. And that's what I liked about
exactly, and that's what I liked about that film as well, because it was so different from the Aquaman we'd already seen, and the visual representation of that. And I like that they're given that license, and they gave James Gunn the license. They were like, go and make whatever you think you're going to make, and they're like, yeah, sure. And it turns out really well. But there you go. Hopefully they've learned their lessons from previous installments.
So are we at 2-2 now?
So yeah, I believe so. So writing was we gave that to Civil War.
Yep.
Acting was a draw. Music was for BVS. Cinematography was BVS.
Oh, okay. So BVS is now edging out Civil War. Okay.
BVS is in the lead. So direction.
That's such a huge because that could go into so many things like
There are two directors of Civil War, so there's two people involved in that. There's a team working in the direction, so I don't know if that gives them an unfair advantage, perhaps, or I don't know if maybe they bounce off each other. I don't know what the directing style is. Maybe there's a strength to one of the Russo brothers, and there's a strength to the other one. Maybe the other one does the action scenes, the other one does the quieter scenes, or something like that.
I think Civil War's got some really great action scenes, some really great like hand-to-hand fights, whereas I think with the nature of, you've got that amazing warehouse fight in BVS, but I think the nature of the combat for someone like Superman or Wonder Woman and Doomsday, like there's going to be... There's no really way to do it other than like hurling the gods hurl thunderbolts,
buildings, buildings at each other,
buildings and stuff, and
exactly.
But I think they both do a really good job of like having those cool little comic book homages. So like just that little moment in BVS where it replicates the cover for The Dark Knight Returns, with the lightning bolt, and obviously they do the same thing in Civil War with the bouncing off the shield. It's difficult because it's tough, it's such a broad church. It does. I think it does kind of go to your own sort of personal bias and what you want to see in a film.
Again, I think the balancing of all the characters, especially like there's not quite as many combatants in, say, one of the action sequences in BVS, so it might be a little easier to kind of keep track of that. But with everything going on in Civil War, they do manage to again, it's the balance of those Marvel films for me, that they can have so much going on, they can have the characters doing so much and have these scenes and have them seemingly fit in and not feel like totally alien or out of the blue. This cohesive universe, and it works. And I think the airport scene is a triumph in just action sequences anyway, and superhero movies as well. Again, I like the action sequences in BVS, but there is so much going on, and to navigate through that and to tell that story in a visual way. If we're just going off that scene alone, I think Civil War would edge out BVS for me. But then there's so much, like you were talking about earlier with BVS and all these little things, like what everything represents and why it's there and how it's pieced together. It's a very specific idea and vision that Zack Snyder has. And again, with all the disparate elements and making them work together.
Because you have one director who's very sort of visually idiosyncratic, and you have another pair of directors who come from a television background, and their strength is working with actors and getting those, but also like pacing and plotting, because in a tight
shorter time frame they have to use. So he's painting a huge canvas, and they're painting loads of very good, intricate, smaller ones, and then kind of fitting them together almost. It is a tough one, but we have to make a decision either way.
Can we call this one a draw?
I think we'll have to.
Because it's really difficult to compare them. Because they're both, whether you like it or not is your personal preference, but they're both doing what they do very well.
Okay, so if we call that a draw, so there's two draws, then we gave the writing to Civil War.
Yep.
And then we gave BVS the other two categories, didn't we?
Yeah.
Do we need to do another category, do you think? Would that be fair?
Is this just because you don't want BVS to win?
I'm not saying. Because it's really hard.
But that's good. It's good that we're having such a hard time with this.
Because
we're showing that the debate is more nuanced than one film does it right and the other film does it wrong.
And I don't want it to. I don't want it to be that way. And it's. But you are right. I don't think there is an easy answer for directing. I don't think there's an easy answer for acting either, because I love Zack Snyder's work. 300's great, Watchmen's great. I love the Zack Snyder-esseness of what he does. I don't think necessarily this is his best film, but there's a unique style. I don't think maybe Civil War has that, again, with the cinematography and everything. But again, there's nothing wrong with Civil War. It's an amazing film.
Do you want to throw in one more category?
Should we just do it?
That. Yeah.
We'll do one more.
Okay.
Well, just because it's not that I don't want to give it to BVS, because I think fair play to it if it is. But what we'll do, just for argument's sake, we'll just do it. We'll just throw a Hail Mary in it, because BVS can still win. Still win. And But then also, if we do another category, then it's a draw again, isn't it?
Okay, I personally have no problem with it being a draw because I think that to me would prove my thesis quite well. In that, like, I know you might you want a really clear and decisive winner.
I do kind of want a
like
winner.
Highlander, there can be only one.
I mean, if you're happy with it, I guess. But then
let's put in another category. Let's do
it. Let's go crazy. So what I'm going to do is I've got 6 categories and I've got a little dice app. So I'm going to roll the dice.
Okay.
And we're going to see what the category is. Or actually, why don't you, Dan, roll the dice?
Because you don't want to be like Tommy Lee Jones's Two-Face, like flipping the coin over and over again until you get the result you want.
No, I don't want that. So I think I've not used this before, but I think if you tap on that, it should roll for us.
So I'm tapping it.
Yeah.
5.
So category 5. So Dan has rolled the dice and category 5. I don't know what category 5 is off the top of my head. Set design.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, it's got to be BVS, hasn't it? It's got to be BVS. It's the winner. It is the winner.
I'm happy to talk about it in more detail.
Yeah, let's talk about set design. But like Civil War is an airport. I do really like the Russian.
There are other locations.
Yeah, I know. But we're always going to talk about the airport when we talk about Civil War.
There's a lot of concrete bunkers.
There is a lot of like I do like the kind of cryogenic place.
Yeah.
The cryogenic all the pods and everything. I quite like that Russian Siberian thing. I like the prison. I like the vault or whatever it's called, or the raft.
I like the little one of my favorite sets is Bucky's apartment in is it Vienna?
Yeah, I think it's Vienna.
And the hallway.
Yeah,
I just think that's...
I love when he uses the railing as like a rope. That's one of my favorites.
I just think that's because one of the biggest criticisms of the MCU is not necessarily criticism I share, but a lot of it just looks like actors in front of a green screen, whereas I think that's one of the sets that just feels the most authentic and lived in.
Yeah.
But that said, I mean, there's nowhere that's as spectacularly ugly as the building where the fight happens in BVS, like the fact that
the warehouse, even the all the locations they absolutely destroy.
Yeah.
And I was enjoying this version because obviously it's trying to kind of deal. I don't know if like when films deal with the criticism of previous films, I'm not sure if I like it or not. But I remember like Simon Pegg was like a big guy who's against Man of Steel because of all the destruction, and I went that argument never held any water for me because he wrote Star Trek Into Darkness where the Enterprise crashes into a city. So I was like, you're talking absolute shit, Simon Pegg. I love you, but that's absolute bullshit. But I think again it's the, like you said, like his artistic background comes to the fore, and we see that in, again, like it's a lot of destruction, there's a lot of rubble, but there is something to that. Even the inside of the Kryptonian ship is gorgeous and beautiful and so unique. Yeah, very Geiger-esque.
And you got the Batcave, which is this very, very sort of linear, very, very clean and rigid. It's like he's imposing his will on this natural space. Yeah. You've got Bruce Wayne's little what's it called? Not penthouse, but the little lake house.
Yeah, the little lake house mansion thing. Yeah,
gorgeous.
Yeah, I do quite like that Batcave and the water and everything when he drives down.
Lois's apartment is amazing.
He's like, Snyder has got like a clear vision. This is how I want it to look. This is the way it's going to be. And again, as much as I love Civil War, the categories that BVS has won in, they do head and shoulders win over those categories.
I think it's because we're going for very visually orientated categories.
But comic books are a visual medium, and again, they replicate them in a way. They replicate a lot of the stuff, and I love. When I can get it, I love comic book accuracy, but I also love wildly different takes.
Yeah.
Not this particular Lex is a wildly different take, but I do like wildly different takes, and this is a take, this is a vision.
You're not getting the joy of Lex.
No, not that low. But I mean, the film in on its whole it has this art direction that Snyder has, and it has a vision behind it. Again, it doesn't look anything like Man of Steel, which is interesting, and it's unique. And their Gotham is very different to what Gothams we've seen before, and Batmen we've seen before.
Man of Steel's shot very differently as well. It's very handheld, very immediate, almost sort of like documentary-esque. And I think with and Justice League, there's kind of similar to BVS in its cinematography, but like it's much more golden, much more sort of like almost pantheonic. Yeah. Is that a word?
Sure. Whatever you want. But I didn't think that BVS would come out on top. But I think your argument and obviously you've had a lot of time to prepare, and I've not prepared anything. But I think it's a victory. You know, it's hands and shoulders just smashed Civil War. But I think again,
if you
Civil
want
War
something,
is
if you
not
want
a bad
something that
film.
says if you want something that says Civil War is better than BVS, just go on YouTube.
Yeah,
you won't
anybody
have to wait for very long to find one.
But again, I would watch this version of BVS. It is the Ultimate Edition. It is the best way to view that film.
And if you can get the IMAX enhanced version, then so much the better, because you do just get those little bits where the black bars go from the bottom and top. They go on the sides, and you just get a little bit of a taller frame, and it's it looks superb.
But I think we do have to have a winner, and I can't argue with you. It is BVS. I did not expect this, but it's done it.
But look, they're both great films.
Absolutely.
They're
both winners.
I think they both accomplish what they're trying to accomplish very well. History was much kinder to one than the other.
Sure.
However, if this helps you sort of reappraise or reevaluate your opinion of BVS, or go back and give it a second chance, or maybe just think, okay, one was much more to my taste than the other, but I'm happy to accept the merits of the other. Like, just as long as we're not being tribal about it, you know.
Well, I've never really bought into the Marvel versus DC thing. Like, it's fun to think about, but I've never been like, the other one is just shit compared to this one. I've had, when I was younger, I did consider some characters not so great, or I had a lower opinion of certain things. But over time, I've just gone, it's all good. It's all good shit. So I think
that's part of when you were a kid. That's how you make sense of the world, is by being tribal and by assigning this good, this bad. But I think you need to get more nuanced about it otherwise, and especially in these very nuanced times where we live in, where we've got so much information coming at us from all angles. I think we need to just be a little bit more nuanced in our thinking and stop thinking in terms of diamond absolutes, as it were, because that can be very damaging to our perspective, as Bruce Wayne will tell you.
he would say that. But yeah, who knew? BVS trounces Civil War. If you disagree with us, tell us. Speaking of people that may disagree with you, Dan, how about some listener comments?
Yeah, absolutely. I've read a couple that I know will disagree with me, and that's fine.
That's okay. We're all entitled to our opinion. So, former guest, very recent guest, Max Byrne, so that's at Maxi Byrne on Twitter, says, BVS edges it for me. Both superb films, though I do like the game of British Bulldogs at the Civil War airport.
Oh, yeah. I mean, kind of. I mean, they are a lot playing with the explosion. And War Machine, doesn't he start like shooting with actual guns and missiles and stuff? And
he does, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel sorry for the poor sods who've parked in the long-term parking bay in that airport.
I mean, at the moment, there's a lot of people that don't like Scarlet Witch within the Marvel universe, especially that little town. But can you imagine all the people that weren't insured those cars?
All those people saying goodbye to their no claims bonus because she's tossing them around like they're Matchbox cars.
Oh dear. So I Am Jack's Musings, my biggest fan, I Am Jack's Musings, says the Ultimate Edition of BVS, Dawn of Justice, is the superior cut, but still features some fatal flaws such as blind alley subplots and the jarring, shoehorned in the franchise furthering dream sequences and case file searches. So I think he's talking about the emails as well. So again, like we were saying, the BVS does have the heavy lifting to do in regards to that, building that universe, that expanded universe. But
if that's an issue for you, then that by all means is just not something that bothered me personally.
He's not finished. He's got more.
Oh, sorry.
Civil War, however, better balances the need to fit into a cinematic universe, introducing new characters while providing moments and screen time for a myriad of previously established ones. In order to round out Cap's trilogy, I could watch this all day.
I do not disagree with any of that. That's
Very good, very good, very reasoned argument. Thank you for that.
Those are all things I love about the film.
Yeah. So Paul Miller, so that's at the Miller Geek. Love both of these movies. Each has a very different tone to me. Civil War, I feel, has better pacing and is a lighter watch. However, BVS for me ticks a lot of boxes. Awesome soundtrack, iconic scenes throughout, especially the actual fight. Lex, though, is what he says. But then he goes, BVS edges it for me as well.
Okay.
So he's a BVS fan. Angry Andy Reviews at Andy_review on Twitter says Civil War.
Is he angry about this?
I imagine he is. Let's hear it. Civil War all the way. Higher stakes, superior character-driven stories, world-changing dynamics that feel earned, consistent, compelling villain, Lex, ? Awful, structurally balanced better, and directed with flair, control in equal measure. Again, all very good points.
Okay.
But that is a take. But who knew? Who knew? But that is it, Dan.
How do you feel about that?
I'm surprised. I am genuinely surprised. I came in thinking Civil War will probably edge it, or but I'm glad that we did it. I'm glad that we did our double bill, a long double bill of 2, because I think that did help in the decision making.
Yep.
I think to actively compare them directly one after each other does help sometimes with the Clone Wars.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I think you've argued it successfully.
I mean, no one's going to take your caramel latte away from you.
No, absolutely not.
But
I love that latte.
But sometimes you might want to crack open a nice bottle of red, and it might just be a bit more satisfying, although more complex.
Absolutely. I think, again, I think that's a great analogy to use. I think that has, again, that's influenced my decision. And I never make my mind up when I come to these. I always come in with an open mind, because I don't want to just be like, I don't want it to be a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
I always come in and I go, keep an open mind. We'll see what happens, and look what happened.
I'm glad that my passion has sort of rubbed off on you a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I do remember a time when you were
not so keen on it.
Yeah, I don't think you ever actively disliked it, but I remember you were kind of cheerfully indifferent to it.
I think what's happened is I didn't like that, and I've grown to like it. And I liked Suicide Squad, and I've grown to not like that one.
Fair enough.
So, which is, the original Suicide Squad, the new Suicide Squad, the Suicide Squad, I like. But yeah, there you go. That is it. Who knew, eh? Who could predict it?
Can we sneak in and release the Ayer cut while we're on the subject of Suicide
Release the
Squad?
Ayer cut, restore the Snyder cut. You're allowed to have a multiverse, so you can have a Snyder cut multiverse. It's not a thing. It's not a problem. It's not an issue.
I would like to see the film that David Ayer wanted to make, rather than the one that was sort of like reverse engineered into Deadpool /
by 2 YouTube editors.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. No, I agree. I would have liked to see that gritty, dark version, which, arguably was probably more in line initially with what the Snyderverse was, potentially. But Dan, we've got to go, because we've already gone on far too long as it is. Tell people where they can find...
Much like a Zack Snyder.
4 hours later. No, I'm not doing a 4-hour Snyder cut of this. Tell people where they can find you on the social media if you want them to find you.
If you want to find me on Twitter, by all means, find me at DL Keatis, Keatis. And as long as you're polite and respectful, share your opinion. I'm more than happy to entertain views that are contrary to my own. Just be polite, or I'll mate with the block button.
Fair enough. I think that's fair on all social medias. But no, absolutely. And you've got a lot of positive things to say, and I always appreciate them. I always appreciate you championing films and stuff that you think are a lesser. I remember you said that you went back and watched The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and you were like, yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a soft spot for those Mark Webb films, and I think there's a lot to love about the second one, even though I'm not going to argue that it doesn't have its issues.
No, of course not.
There's a lot that I find myself going, this is actually, I dig this. Visually, performance-wise,
sure. Yeah, there's stuff. Again, he definitely has a vision as well. But yeah, maybe we could do the Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3.
I mean, let's be honest. We have, as geeks in the 2020s, we have an embarrassment of riches at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. We're spoiled.
If you grew up in the 80s and 90s, you got like one piece of comic book media every 10 years. So
yeah, and you get like a Ghost Rider, and you'd be like, I guess that was okay. Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah,
it's something.
So I just can't bring myself to be
hate
negative
on anything,
or to like throw my dummy out the pram or whatever. We've just got so much of this stuff, and and even if it's not to your taste or if it clashes with your understanding of what the characters are, I think if you let go of your preconceptions and try and enjoy the film or TV show or animated series or whatever on its own terms, you're going to have a much better time. And it will have been nothing is made. Obviously, there's corporate interference and there's people looking at bottom lines, but like, there's between even something like Josh Trank's Fantastic Four, there's people who want to do the best thing they possibly can, and they're putting a lot of love, heart, soul, and effort into it. Yeah,
no, I agree. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of people shitting on comic book movies in general. There was a guy recently on it can be a bit of a wanker, but I like him. But he was like, "Oh, why is everyone just praising this new comic book movie? I actually appreciate real art. I watch the undiscovered, underrated classics, which is something I do." And I went, "There's a world where you can enjoy a comic book movie and you can enjoy some fucking, Akira Kurosawa.
Yeah,
there is a world where because I do that all the time. The podcast is about that. I like the underrated films. I like the underappreciated stuff, and that's what today's been all about as well. And but yeah, you can enjoy both. It's okay. It's fine. You don't always. I know this particular format is we have to clash things together, but it's all out of respect and out of love, and and there's a reason we're doing it because they're a bit similar, sure, but I don't actively like to go out and just badmouth any film or any other film that is better than the other. But anyway, you can find me on my social medias if you want. So I'm on Facebook at Secret Bores. Twitter is at Dan_Bores. Instagram it's SpiderDan Secret Bores. Like, share, comment, subscribe, etc. Don't forget to use the hashtag #PrepareForPrattle when you interact with us. And if you want to join the Prattalion and be briefed in full on the Secret Bores, swing over to Prattleworld at spiderdownthesecretbores.com. I would like to thank my patrons on Patreon. I Am Jack's Musings, Paul Meller, Max Burns, Scott Hodgson, Simon Cottam, and 2 new ones, Mike Burton of Genuine Chit Chat and Angry Andy of Angry Andy Reviews. Thank you very much for your donations. Thanks for coming on board. There's a lot more content on its way for you, so thanks for all of your continuing donations. It is very much appreciated and helps Prattleworld keep on turning. And if you ever find yourself in a position to help the podcast, please consider it. So some people might consider this an upset, but if you're upset, that's your problem. We're quite happy with the decision we've made.
Yeah, join the conversation.
Exactly. Have some fun. Watch it again. Watch it several times. Every time I've watched it, it has got better. I will say that, and I'm glad Dan sat me down and forced my eyes open, much like a Clockwork Orange, and made me watch it again.
Not literally.
Close. No, it's been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you giving up your weekend to do the double bill and to record this, Dan. You've been fantastic.
My pleasure.
Have a great day, everyone. Have a happy Mother's Day.